Welcome to episode 82 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary, with Kristen
and Catherine, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for a virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Catherine.
So, in our Would You Rather fashion, we're doing another one this week. It's Would You Rather not read books for an entire year or only read bad books for 6 months? And I kind of feel like we're just going to have the same response on this. Like, I feel like it's a bit of an easy one, which is probably okay because so much happens this week in this book and next week and every week. I know. Broken record. Yeah. But yeah, so what would you pick?
I would obviously pick the bad books for 6 months.
Yeah. There's no other real answer.
No. And I feel like the only thing that would get frustrating is, you know how when you're trying to find a good book and you start reading a book and it never picks up the way you want it to, and then you're like, oh, this book is bad, and then you just let it fall to the wayside. Mm-hmm. But then when you find a really good book, you're really satisfied. You're like, oh, that was so good. Right?
Yeah.
So I feel like the only downside to only reading bad books for 6 months is that you'll be constantly chasing that feeling of finally finding a good one.
Yeah, and you're never going to get there.
You know for a fact it's never happening.
Yeah, that'd be so frustrating. But I guess the other part of it too is can you read bad books? Could you read
I was thinking that! What constitutes a bad book? Because everyone says Twilight's a bad book, but I'm okay with reading Twilight. I can get
I'd read that for 6 months.
I don't know if I'd read it constantly.
No. But
I was literally thinking the same thing. And everyone thinks 50 Shades is bad, and it is, but I can still read it and I can still be okay with it.
Take some enjoyment out of it.
Yeah. So are we talking critically bad books, or are we talking books that we find bad?
Yeah, it's hard because it almost can't be it's kind of like movies. It's very similar. All the movies that win all the big awards, mm-hmm. I don't give a fuck about. So
I hate them.
Yeah. So I'm it's kind of similar like that. I can read a trashy book that I'm oh my God, why am I reading this? There's no, it's bad.
Yes,
it's bad.
Yeah.
I've read some bad books. Plot bad, writing bad, and I've enjoyed parts of them. So, if I can do that, it really depends what we're defining bad as, which is what we get down to every fucking week. We really, start pushing back. We came up with this game, and we push back at it every week. We're but what are the parameters? Yeah. Every week. Yeah. This is us.
But so do you know what I was thinking of for another bad book? That Katie Robert won The Dragon Bride, and the dragon has 2 penises. That was an enjoyable book.
Very enjoyable.
But I gave a plot synopsis to I don't know, a friend of mine or something like that, and they were like, "What are you reading?"
Fair. But I understand why you think that.
But to be fair, I didn't know that that's what it was going to be when I read it. You told me about it, but I still did not believe.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of her books are just sex. Yeah. Which is, if that's what you're looking for, it doesn't make it bad. No. But yeah. I read, I know it's getting a bit of heat lately, but Haunting Adeline.
Did you read that after?
Yeah. And I read half of the second book, and then I was I don't know where this is going, so I'm going to stop.
So and I actually went looking for that book at the bookstore. Because I'd seen so much of it on Book Talk.
Yeah.
Everybody is talking about it, and I was there must be something to it. So then I went looking for it, and the missus was yeah, we don't carry that.
Yeah, no. There's a lot to it. Like, I don't know. I enjoyed it, parts of it, but like, it's very dark and like rapey. But there's like trigger warnings, like there are with all books. So like, you know, you should always check the trigger warnings before you read anything. But yeah, it was, and like I enjoyed it enough to read half of the second one. It also ends on kind of a cliffhanger, and I had to know what happened. And once that was resolved, I was like, I don't know where this could go, so I don't want to continue reading it.
Yeah, it's like that. Those movies, the 365.
Oh yeah, I didn't watch those. Yeah.
I didn't either, but the new one is coming out or has been released like in the past few days, and a lot of people are upset with that one because it's like glorifying like kidnapping.
Yeah, and that's basically exactly what this one is. Like, he's a stalker in the book. He stalks her, but he's also like a good-ish guy on the side, but he's a murderer, and it's like, I know I preach about duality in people, but
maybe not excessive. This kind of duality.
Yeah. But yeah, like, I would classify that as, like, not a great book, but I did enjoy parts of it because, you know. But yeah. So, even books that I've read that I thought, like I read Blood and Chocolate again.
Yeah.
It's a bad book. But I enjoyed it enough. I don't know. I think you can find enjoyment in bad books. So it's better than not reading at all.
Yeah.
Even if they're really bad books. I guess if they're like super dry books that with like no fantasy, no sex.
Well, like, I guess, are we talking like you said, like self-help? Are we talking like self-help books here?
Yeah.
Like, that's right? All we're allowed to read. Or like how to make money fast. Or like how to make the most of your MLM. Like,
oh my god, yeah. Then I would rather not read if that's it.
How to create a pyramid scheme. Like,
but like, if they're, that's the thing about bad, because like they just don't interest us. They're not necessarily bad.
You think there
or
are people out there
written.
that want to read about pyramid schemes? Well, actually, yes.
Someone that's trying to create a pyramid scheme, maybe? I don't know. Like, there has to be someone.
That's true.
But yeah, I don't know. This is too hard. It's not.
It's not, but it is.
Yeah, because if it is, like, self-help, not
or, like,
non-fiction.
An idiot's guide to, like, building computers.
Oh my god. Textbooks, yeah. We're talking about like a math textbook. Like, my eyes would just start bleeding. And I like math. Yeah.
Oh, it'd be so problematic.
So I guess if it's bad books but of the genre that we read, then I would rather read it.
Yes.
Than not read anything for a year.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we're both.
That is where we're at.
Yeah, so just a heads up, this isn't a spoiler-free zone, and things could get saucy. Last week, we ended off, so I guess we'll go through our three groups. Manon and the 13 have been training as a unit with their wyverns, but Manon hasn't been able to do the crossing. She did steal some spider silk from a Stygian spider, and she tried to do the crossing, but then Abraxos was terrified, and then then Iskra, like, started whipping him, and she beat the shit out of Iskra, because she doesn't have a heart.
Yes, and her little baby wyvern was in danger.
Yeah, sin. Adian and Chaol kind of realized, but didn't outright say, that magic was stopped using 3 towers of that weird stone, and somehow they think that maybe if they knock one over, magic will come back.
Valid hypothesis.
Yeah, we're surprised nobody got there before that.
Yes!
Celaena and Rowan got into a fight, and then they kind of got over it, but didn't really, and he took her to save, what's his name?
Luca,
thank you. Who was stuck on ice, and she, like, has to go out and use her power and get him out of there, but then a big old beast comes and tries to kill them, and she ends up with a sword, which she says she's keeping. And they have a chat afterwards, and basically they decide that they'll start trying to work together to become more like real people again and not just stuck in their own grief. Yeah, so that is my summary. Oh, and also, Celaena ended up burning the tattoo off of Rowan's arms, which I was very upset about. So this week, we're doing chapters 39 to 53, and it starts off in Celaena's point of view, and we're with her, and she's tattooing Rowan's arms. Basically the spots that he couldn't reach himself, because he fixed them up, which is kind of crazy. Do you think he tattooed with his left hand, or is it only on one
I just
side?
don't understand, like, how, if they're doing, like, old school tattooing, where it's, like, a little needle and a mallet, like,
it is,
traditional, like, tattooing, how the hell is he gonna get his own arms? He needs two hands.
True. Do you think he's just, like, holding the needle and then, like, hitting it off something like a table, or, like, I was
thinking maybe he was using his wind to...
Oh, also smart. He does have magic. Maybe not like someone else has magic later and they have secret hands, which get all sexy, but yeah, it's a good point. But yeah, she says that she's only helped fill in the spots he can't reach. Yeah. He ends up telling her that he learned how to tattoo in a war camp, and the male who taught him would tattoo the number of, like, enemies he killed and, like, the story of his battles, kind of. They also mix the ink with salt and powdered iron to keep it in Fae skin, which sounds awful. Like,
I mean, but if they're not feeling, like, effects of it, like, it's no different than our ink. Like, I get it if it sort of weakens them, but if it doesn't, then what's the big deal?
Well, it's only so that it won't heal itself, I think. Like, that powdered iron is in it so it won't heal itself. But I think the salt is literally just in there so that it feels painful.
Oh, gross.
Yeah. They kind of make a deal that they'll ask each other a question for question about their families. So she asks Rowan about his parents, and he says that they were very old when he was born, and he was their only child in the millennia that they were mated. And they faded into the afterworld when he was 20. So they weren't around very long, especially since it takes Faye, like, a while to mature, and he's been around for hundreds of years. He asks her then if she had any siblings, but she tells him her mother almost died during her birth, so she had no siblings, but she had a cousin. And she kind of thinks to herself about Adian, obviously, and she says she's seen, or thinks she's seen, his name as a skilled general in the king's army, and all she can think is, like, how she failed him, and she wonders about, like, what happened to him that he changed from, like, the fiercely loyal kid he was, because he was so loyal to her and to Terrason, and to turn into the king's general now is just, like, she's not judging him in any way. She actually feels like she failed him, and, like, we get his point of view, and we get that he feels like he failed her, and you're like, if you guys would just think, you'd probably realize you're feeling the same thing.
But also, it's funny, like, she's really only seen his name on, like, paper. Like, she knows nothing about him, has not encountered him at all since they were separated. So, like, he, like, he is a complete stranger to her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Other than, like, being children together.
Yeah.
She even thinks, like, she's glad that they didn't end up at the castle at the same time, because she didn't want to face him. And obviously he would immediately recognize her. But it's kind of, I guess she was only really at the castle lately. Like, before that, she was just in Adderlyn, so it wasn't as likely to run into him, but it's, yeah. Rowan asks her if her cousin would help her or kill her, because he says his army could turn the tide in war if he, like, went against the king, basically. And she says she doesn't want to know, because she's afraid that he'll hate her, basically. And she thinks, like, people thought that they would end up married, but that is never something that she expected. And I think we kind of got it last week that, like, he would, because he would do anything for her in her kingdom, in his kingdom, but, like, he wouldn't actually
choose it himself.
Yeah. I don't really know why it was necessary to put it in the book at all. I wonder if maybe this was going somewhere else at some point. I don't know. I think it's to remind us that, like, cousins married each other, and, like, I don't think they're, like, first cousins, but, like, I think it's to be like, in this time, in this world, cousins could marry each other, so it's not so weird who she ends up with, who she's distantly related to. So she asks Rowan then if he has any cousins, and he says he has too many, and that she'd likely get along with them, which is cute. Mm-hmm. He asks her something that he's already asked her, but he asks why she would save her friend's kingdom, but not her own throne. And she says if she frees Eelway and defeats the king as Celaena, she can go anywhere. And, like, the crown, her throne, is another set of shackles. And he does the whole, like, goes still and, like, who hurt you thing. And he's like, what do you mean by another set of shackles? And she just says that, like, Arobynn used to use them for training.
Which is not, well, I don't actually know if it's not true or not. That's not what she was talking about.
No. And I think it is true, like, because he did some fucked up shit.
Yeah. But, like, this sort of bothers me a little bit, because we literally go from last week, like, yeah, they have their moment of, like, finally agreeing to try and, like, heal. But, like, he was a dick to her yesterday. Yeah. And today he's being all, like, protective, like, what are you talking about? What shackles? As if, like, he could really, like, go after her, like, whoever hurt her, you know what I mean? It was just...
I do. But I think it's so ingrained in him that, like, even if he heard about this yesterday, he would have reacted the same way, even though he's being a dick. Like, it doesn't really make sense, but I think it's just a, like, reaction that he's having.
Okay.
She kind of thinks, like, she can't talk about Endover yet or talk about Chaol and how he built her up and then shattered her.
Do we think the shattering is just purely from the whole thing with Nehemia, or do you think she was more talking about his training and stuff?
I think I was thinking, like, Nehemia dying and him not trusting her. Like, the lack of trust. Like, he chose the king over her, I guess. Which is kind of his job. But him not trusting her, I think, and her realizing that he would never pick her, that he's there for the king.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of... And then being like, I'm shipping you off, because when I look at you, all I can think about is how you're Fae, and that scares me.
Ugh. What a big baby.
Yeah. She kind of feels like Rowan doesn't believe her when she said that she was talking about Arobynn. But he asks why she stayed with Arobynn, and she says she wanted to stay hidden because she didn't want to be Aelin, and she wanted to hurt anyone who hurt her, and Arobynn obviously gave her the means to do that. And she says, like, if Arobynn actually threw her out, she would have died, or she would have joined the rebels, and then she would have just killed all the Ardalanian soldiers she could, and probably would have ended up dying herself. So, like, she's kind of glad she stayed with him, even though it's clearly every bit of that relationship we hear about is abusive, especially if you read Assassin's Blade. He's kind of surprised by her past, but she says she's sure he has many stories to tell too. And he tells her, like, there's no going back with them now. And she mentions his other friends, but he says they aren't friends. And he's, like him and her aren't friends, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, that kind of hurts her feelings. But he says he's training her, and she's under his command. Because, like, he's very much a general army man, like, kind of thing. And she's visibly hurt by hearing this, because she's, like, obviously attaching to the first person she can right now. I think we talked about that a bit last week. But he says whatever they are, he needs space to figure it out too. And, like, she's kind of okay with that, because she's like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, he's not great at opening up to people.
Right.
We go over to Dorian's point of view, and Dorian and Sorsha are in his room, and she sneaks there every night, and they haven't had sex yet, because she wants to wait, but...
Wait for what?
I know, she's had sex with a guard before. Like, she's had sex before.
Yeah.
So she's just not ready, which is fine. You don't have to have sex with people. I just don't really understand. Maybe it's similar to, like...
Well, because she jumped him.
Yeah. I wonder if it's just like, oh, your father ruined my parents' lives, and by that I mean killed them. So maybe that's why she doesn't want to sleep with him? I don't know.
Yeah, I was also wondering if maybe it had to do with the fact that, like, I don't know, she, like, just cares about him and doesn't want to be another notch in his belt.
True. And, like, it's easy to catch feelings for somebody in general when you're around them a lot, but, like, once you throw sex into the mix, you're a goner. If you're already, like... So, yeah, it could be something like she's afraid of that, too. And then you kind of just wonder, like, maybe this is all just a play. I don't think it is, because we were in her head, and she was like, damn, he's hot. But, you know. So they're in bed, and Dorian asks her about her greatest wish, and she kind of, like, jokingly around, she's like, she doesn't have one, but he wants to give her everything, and she says, the moon on a string. And he says he'll start praying to Diana, who is the goddess of the hunt. And that reminds him of Celaena again. Which, like, we're kind of getting a bit of this with Sorsha. But he just thinks, like, he was a fool, and he was a young boy in love with a wildfire.
It was like two...
Just kind of...
It was just like, it was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. But, like, I do think he's grown up a bit since then. Because, like, he's a lot smarter in this book than other people. I'll give him that. But it's just interesting because he doesn't actually know who she is yet. Or does he? No, he does.
He does.
Yeah, he found out last week. Chaol shows up before Sorsha can leave, and Dorian is pissed at him, obviously. Because the last time they met, he realized that him and Adian are working together. And then he asks Chaol if he's even sorry, or if he's only sorry that he was caught working with Adian.
Well, I think somebody finally had to tell Chaol what's up, and that he's being a D-bag.
But he says, you cannot pick and choose which parts of her to love.
I love that. I love it so much. Yeah. Somebody had to tell him, because, like, he was literally still thinking about marrying her, except, she's parfait, and he doesn't like that.
Well, and she killed someone. Like, oh my god. And you're like, she's literally an assassin. Like, I don't know how many times we can say this.
This is her job.
Yeah. It has been her job for years. Yeah. Like, yeah. So, I just love that he actually...
I love somebody...
Dorian understands.
Somebody putting him in his place.
Yeah. And Dorian being like, hey, it's not her, it's you.
Yeah.
Chaol then kind of argues back that he isn't choosing which pieces or whatever, but Dorian cuts him off and says he is, and tells him there's no going back. And Chaol says if he could, Celaena wouldn't be queen and Dorian wouldn't have magic.
Yikes.
Which is just, like, so shitty to say.
Yeah, it's like...
So shitty to say.
If I had it my way, you wouldn't be who you are, and she wouldn't be who she is.
Yeah.
Done.
My life would be perfect. It's like, what the fuck?
It's not all about you, dude. Like,
yeah.
And this is the most annoying thing for me, is that he literally serves a king and sees the shitty things the king does. And he still, like, would rather live in a world with the king being shitty.
Yeah.
Rather than, like, allow Dorian and Celaena to be who they are.
Yeah.
Like,
it's kind of crazy, like, his fear of magic and his fear of, like, we only get more of it. Like, we don't really get him getting over it.
Which is why...
And he never has to.
This is what I mean. I don't understand why people are like, he really grows in this book. I don't understand why people hate his guts. This is why!
But, like, I mean in the series as a whole.
Yes.
There's no point that he ever gets over this prejudice he has.
No. He swallows it.
Isn't that the point?
He swallows it a little bit, like, for the greater good.
Yeah. But, like, it's wild that I just think it's a missed opportunity in the writing of his character. That, like, he really... If you want us not to hate him, if you're going to write an entire book about him, we kind of need to get something redeemable.
Yeah. Now, I'm not going to lie. Like, okay, so Tower of Dawn is Chaol's book, and it happens between book 5 and book 6 of the series. I read it. I needed to. It came out. It was in my way.
Of course, yeah.
I had to read it. And actually, so I read it one time, and I was reading through the series again, and I decided not to read it. Like, there are some necessary things in there that are explained that you don't...
100%.
That you sort of need. So, like, anybody who ever suggests, oh yeah, you can skip Tower of Dawn, you can't. However, I still skip it with, like, every time I read through the series, I don't read that one.
No, but it's similar with Assassin's Blade. I kind of do the same thing with that sometimes. But, like, I know the basics of what happens in that book. I don't need to read it again. But, yeah. And like, he grows in that book. I'll give you that.
Yes.
But
not enough.
Not enough for me.
No. And that's the thing, too. Like, did I read the book? Yes. Did I enjoy it while I was reading it? Sure. We
were waiting for the last book to come out, and this was our straw. Yeah. This was our snorkel to breathing again. Like, we were doing our best with what we had.
Yeah. Like, I did enjoy it while I was reading it, and I'm sure if I had the inclination to pick it up again and read it again, I'm sure I might be okay with it again, especially because it is her writing, and you can tell it is. So, like, I just enjoy her as a writer.
And there are other characters in that book that are top-notch.
That make it.
Big fan.
Yeah. However, you're right, like, he doesn't change enough and become enough of a decent person for me to warrant liking him and to warrant, like, defending him and being like, oh, he grew so much. Did he?
Where?
He grows... Okay, guys, there's too many spoilers, so I'll just say this. He grows a little bit, but not enough for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't know. He is a child.
He, like, I don't know, man, like, what we end up with in book 6 is just a slightly more mature, maybe, version of what we already have, which is a mediocre captain of the guard human-y dude.
Yeah. I guess the only thing is, like, these books 1 to 7 happen within like a year.
Yeah.
So, like, if we ever get a story in the future, maybe he will be an adult. Anyway, we could... Every episode is not going to be this, but, you know.
We're on episode 4.
Yeah. Well, maybe every episode is going to be bashing Chaol. But, anyway, so Dorian isn't surprised that he wouldn't want Celaena to be the queen, which she isn't. She's heir, and he wouldn't want Dorian to have magic, because, like, that's his problem, and he tells him that, and he says it all comes down to Chaol not wanting things to change, which is, like, kind of what we said. It's a bit of immaturity on his part, expecting nothing to change and expecting, like, others to work with what you want as your...
Yeah, and, like, others to stay the same because it's convenient for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So, like, it is the whole immaturity thing. But yeah, Dorian tells him, like, his magic...
he's not immature enough to want to get married. So that's okay.
Yeah. My God. Run away together. Dorian tells him his magic isn't going anywhere, and Chaol doesn't have the right to wish it away, which is obviously so true.
I love it so much.
And
go Dorian.
Yeah, he's throwing out all the truths there. And he says, like, he also can't wish that Celaena isn't Aelin, isn't who she is. The only thing he can do going forward is he can decide if he's going to be her enemy or her friend. So Dorian is saying this to Celaena. And Dorian kind of thinks to himself a bit about, like, he knows that Celaena didn't blink at his magic. She understood, and she didn't want him to be anything but who he was. And she told him that she'd come back for him, and he believes her. So he even tells Chaol, like, he's made his decision up about her, whether she's his friend or enemy, and he hopes that Chaol makes the same one. And, like, in his head, we know that, like, it's obviously going to be
friend,
ally, friend, but yeah. So we go over to Adian's point of view, and Adian, Chaol, and Ren are in Aelin's apartment, and they're waiting for Murtagh, who is on his way back from near Skulls Bay. And Ren is super impatient and basically complaining about everything and how nothing is happening fast enough, and they're waiting for Aelin to come back and all this shit. But he says he has an informant who can give them more information, but they immediately shut him down and say they don't trust his sources because one of his sources getting caught is the reason why he was attacked the week before, by those men that Chaol didn't know.
Right.
Yeah. So they're like, obviously we don't trust your informants. Like, that's a terrible plan. But he has an informant. I wonder who that could be. Murtagh shows up then and asks if they know who General Narok is. And Adian says that he's heard from pirates that ended up going north to avoid this General Narok, that he has been in the south sailing to the Dead Islands. And, like, Chaol says he knows nothing about who this general is. So, good caption of the card. Mm-hmm. 10 out of 10. Would recommend. Murtagh then tells them that Rolf is now back to Skulls Bay because he had fled as well. But Narok's fleet are nearby and no one ventures there. And Rolf swears he can hear not quite human screams coming from where they're staying. And he says when he sailed back, he saw a man who felt wrong with a silence around his body. And he could tell it was a made creature. So, like, we don't know a whole lot about Rolf at all. And we know a tiny bit more if you've read Assassin's Blade. But, like, he could kind of sense that this creature is made. So there's something going on with him. And he says the creature wore a black collar, and it seemed like it had an invisible leash, because it kind of like stepped towards them, but then was pulled back. So it's being controlled by something. And Rolf says he thinks they're being made on the Dead Island. Whatever this creature is being made. And Norok obviously has taken them to Wendelin. Yeah. Chaol asks why. But Murtagh says it's because somebody convinced the king to send his champion there. So he's trying out his made creatures, because there's obviously going to be a lot of chaos around there after the royal family dies. Chaol realizes that, like, he's saying that this is his fault, but he says, like, she won't actually kill the royals.
Yeah.
And it was all just a ruse to get her away. Which is kind of giving a lot away, but whatever.
I mean, they are the rebels, so I feel like it's
yeah.
okay.
But she also killed a bunch of them, and now he's like, she's not the type. Murtagh also tells them that Rolf refused to send a warning and to risk his men and his land after just getting back to it, basically. But Murtagh did send a few messages with blockade runners to, like, alert Wendelin of these creatures. But he says the problem is that these creatures are likely elsewhere too, not just on the Dead Islands. So they have stuff to worry about on their side of the world as well.
Yeah.
We go to Chaol's point of view now, and it's immediately after this, but Ren and Murtagh have left, and Aedion asks Chaol what he's doing, because he's not fighting for Aelin. But he's obviously working with the rebels, and Chaol says he's trying to help Dorian, and Aedion tells him that that's his problem. He needs to pick a side, and he says he won't fight against his people, which would be, like, if he chose Aelin's side, he would be fighting against his own people. But Aedion asks, like, what if Dorian chooses Aelin's side? And he says he would fight with Dorian no matter what he decides. And Aedion's just like, so you'll fight with Dorian, but you won't fight for what is right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of what, like, you've been saying about the king and shit. But yeah. Chaol then counters that Aedion's queen will condemn him if he spills innocent blood too. And Aedion asks if he means, like, she condemned Chaol for the death of her friend. And then he's, like, in Chaol's face, and he is mad. Like, Aedion is pissed.
Yeah, but, like, rightfully so.
100%.
Like, how many innocent Terracinians?
Oof, Terracin people is what I would think. But
how many of them have died through the years? How many of people across the world have died? How many friggin' Adarlanians have died just because this king is a dick?
Yeah.
And, like, Chaol just has fucking blinders on, man.
Yeah.
It's like he's ignoring all that, and it's maddening.
Yeah, it is. It's infuriating. And Aedion is in his face, and he literally says, when Chaol has experienced, like, his men dying, his women unforgivably hurt, and orphaned children that are starving in the streets in front of him, then he can talk about sparing innocent lives.
Thank you. Yes, he is a 20-year-old man-child who has killed one person in his entire life, and he is trying to preach about goodness to a family that were literally, like, attacked and had their parents murdered as children.
Yeah.
Like,
by his ruler. And then, like, the way he's acted about Endovir, and, like, he only really started caring about it because he, like, saw how bad it was for Celaena, but he was like, oh, they all deserved it. Like, and Aedion even says in the next part, he tells him, like, he hasn't picked a side because he's a boy, and it will cost him in the future if he doesn't figure it out.
Yep.
Chaol basically just leaves. He has nothing to say. And then the next day, he goes to the king to tell him that he's going back to Eniel with his father. And the king's just like, cool.
Peace out. Don't care. You're not that useful anyway.
Right? I have my own secret army. He obviously doesn't say that, but we all know it. We go over to Celaena's point of view now, and she's been exploring her well of magic, and she hasn't been able to find a bottom to it yet. Precise magic is the hardest, so they kind of move from ruin to ruin to work on her magic. She says she's eating 2 to 3 times more than usual because she's using up so much magic and energy, like, while she's doing these types of workouts.
Which sounds amazing.
Yeah. And it's also another one of the, like, healthy characters. Like, Sarah J. Maas, I know, like, most of her characters aren't, like, plus-sized or anything, because most of them are in times when they're starving and shit. So it's a bit... But she does advocate for healthy bodies in her female characters. It's all about strong, healthy bodies. So I do appreciate that. Yeah. And then there's the whole thing with Bryce. Some people think she's plus size, some people don't. It's... Yeah. Who knows? Anyway, she kind of thinks, like, sometimes her and Rowan talk, and she realizes that it does help, even if she can't open up about everything. Like, opening up about a few things is helping her to heal. And she also likes hearing Rowan speak. He tells her about his campaigns and his adventures, and he tells her about a whole giant world to the south and east of Wendelin, and with, like, kingdoms and empires. And it's kind of weird, because there's no map in the book, I don't think, that shows any of this area. And it's kind of like, is this something? Is this, like, gonna come up at some point? Like, are they, like, not to get too into spoilers or anything, but, like, is this gonna come up in future books? Possibly.
I don't know.
Yeah. He doesn't really tell her much about his friends, but they accompany him through bloody years, laying siege to cities of sand and stone, which kind of reminded me of Crescent City. Like, for some reason, I think of Crescent City as a sandy world.
Ew.
Yeah. Like, maybe pre-Crescent City?
Oh. Like,
could the side be pre-Crescent City? Like, I don't know the timelines. Anyway. Too much. But Celaena basically starts to hate Maeve in these moments when she's heard about, like, all the shit he's had to do for her. So Beltane, which is like a holiday, but it seems like it's more towards the Fae than it is towards humans. There's feasting, dancing, and celebrating is approaching. And...
Oh! Can I just point out, Beltane is actually a Gaelic May Day festival and traditionally held on the 1st of May.
Oh.
So it's a real thing.
Yeah, I guess.
She takes, I think, a lot of her mentions, like a lot of her lore, she incorporates, like, Irish or Celtic mythology into it.
Yeah.
Because, like, the whole notion of the Fae is inherently Celtic.
Yeah.
Right? So I think she has incorporated a whole lot. And I'm here for it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, so I guess if you think back to last book, they went through winter. So, like,
mm-hmm.
I'm guessing this probably means that this is May.
Mm-hmm. Long time.
Which is interesting because, like, obviously, not too much of a spoiler, but at the end of this book, she goes back. Which she said she would do, and obviously it was her plan all along. But she's going back, and it's going to be summer soon. And it's going to be the summer of Aelin. Just the fact that summer, I'm like fire, and summer, it's like, makes more sense. But We don't actually get into seasons in the book all that much, I find.
No, times of year, yeah. Like, the passage of time, we don't really get a lot of.
No, because, like, it's something is wrong with my brain, but every book I read, I'm like, that is 1 year. That book, 1 year. Because I started with Harry Potter, so now every book I read is 1 year. It doesn't matter if it's fucking 2 days. If this is, like, the book of 24, and it's, like, 24 hours, and that's it. I'm like, that was 1 year. And I realize this is a fault of myself, and the entire series of 7, 8 books is, like, less than a year. But I'm like, each book, 1 year. Check. Fuck. But anyway, so we're at Beltane is approaching, and Celaena is nowhere near ready to go see Maeve yet. As she's mastered her shifting, which is obviously the first step, but she is still struggling with her magic. She thinks about when she was a child during Beltane, she would run wild, and her mother told her it was her night. It kind of reminds me of, like, Guy Fawkes Day.
Yeah. Like,
just bonfire night.
Yeah.
Is also what call it. But, yeah. Like, but she says there were fires everywhere, and obviously fire was her thing. Yeah. But Adian would trail her as her guard, even as, like, he's
small
only,
children.
Like, 2 years older than her, isn't he?
No, like, he's, like, I think he's 4 to 5, because wasn't he, like, 12 or 13 when...
Maybe, yeah.
When, he was, like, I feel like he was 13 when, Adeline took over, and she was only 8, so...
That would make sense,
He's, like, 5 years older than her.
Yeah. Still, though, like, she's remembering this. It's happened multiple times. So, like, 7, 6, like, he was
5,
only...
Yeah. Like, 12, 11, 10.
Yeah. It's very young, but, like, obviously he knew... It's funny to, like, contrast the two, because, like, he knew his job at a young age, and he took to it and loved it and was there for it. And her job at a young age was to become queen. And she rebelled against it.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting the, like, contrast between the two of them. And then how they turned out basically the exact same.
But I also feel like part of the reason why she didn't want to be queen is because she knew she didn't have control of her magic and it scared her. And she didn't want to hurt people.
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah, I think her parents really failed her.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you there. Like, I think her dad seemed like he tried his best. Like, he was trying to get her to, like, let's send her to magic school. Let's, like, send her to a school with kids her own age so that she can interact. I think her mom really did her dirty.
Yeah, and I get that obviously she was afraid of Maeve, and, like, for good reason. Mm-hmm. I get it. But... yeah, they really did end up failing her in the long run. Sad. Well, maybe not the long run, in the, like, in the long run of her childhood, I guess, but...
yeah, and then they went and died.
Ugh, their fault. So bad. Obviously not. Anyway, so, it's Beltane in the present time now, and Rowan brings Celaena to a field, and there's, like, a giant pile of wood in the middle and 2 smaller piles on either side, and he tells her that her job is going to be to light and control them, and, like, the big one is supposed to be a bonfire that goes up into the clouds, and the other 2 are for people to, like, jump over, which is, like, part of the tradition of this night is people jump over bonfires. So that's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, well, she can't for someone burn who's anybody.
Yeah, for someone who's afraid of her magic, it's a lot of responsibility. Also, Demi-Fae have started arriving from other places for the festival, just to, I guess, have community.
Yeah,
like be in
celebrate
like,
with
kind
community.
Of thing.
Yeah.
So she noticed a few admiring glances towards her, but they stopped when they saw Rowan. And then she has also seen some females interested in him, and she wants to claw their faces off. She then is like, oh, it's so weird. It must be because we've been spending so much time together, because I don't think of him in any romantic or sexual way. You're like, what? How?
Because he's been a dick.
I guess, but like, she's seen his body and we've been in her head and she's been like, damn.
Yeah.
But she also, I think this is the real part of it. She also, in her head, is like, he's not interested in me. Like, he can't be, because he's a bajillion years old and has been with so many different females.
And
like,
has been a dickhead.
Yeah, well, exactly. Like, and calls her down to the dirt constantly. Like, yeah. So she's like, there's no way he's interested in me. I'm not even thinking about that. But she says, like, she literally growled at a female last night who looked like she was going to approach him, which is just like, you can't talk about territorial men and then do this shit.
But also, I secretly love that she's, like, really embracing her fae side. And, like, yeah, she's growling. Like, it's not something human people do. I don't even know what I would think it would look like. Like, Urgh! Like, that, to me, that doesn't sound threatening at all. To me, that's like, are you a pirate? Like,
Arr.
Urgh!
Arr is a pirate.
Yeah.
We've talked about this a few times, I think, because we've talked about books like this. But I could not imagine anything hot about a growl until Roy Kent in Ted Lasso. And I was like, no, yeah. That's hot.
Yeah.
That's hot as fuck. Thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also understand, like, her, like, brushing it away and being like, realistically, if a woman were to come up to him, that would take him away from her training and their friendship. Like, I can see her explaining this away in a completely platonic way. I can understand why she is.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's dumb, but I can see it.
Mm-hmm.
So she's at Beltane and she's already exhausted and she's worried about the fires, but she knows that Rowan will help her control them if she loses it, because, like, he can just turn off all the oxygen in the air and shut off the fires, basically. It's perfect.
Yeah.
He also tells her that there are healers around, too, in case, like, she ends up burning somebody, because he gives zero fucks about anybody. It is actually wild how little he cares about everybody.
It's problematic.
It is very problematic. So she does what she's told. She starts controlling the fires, and they aren't consuming any wood. And as people and musicians show up, her flames, start moving to the music. And obviously she's using more magic than she has ever used, so she's sweating everywhere, and her stomach is growling because magic uses energy. And she's smelling all the food around, and she asks Rowan when she can stop. And Rowan tells her when he says so, and she's like, I need a break, but he says just a little longer. So she starts to kind of retreat into the music and kind of, like, go with the music instead of, like, having to think about how shitty this is. Because I'm thinking it's kind of like when you're running and how shitty running is, and then you're like, I just gotta keep going, and then you just kind of start thinking about other songs. Like,
trying to push through. Push through the pain.
Yeah. So she, like, starts thinking about the music and her fire, and it all starts melding together, and she thinks how she's connected to it all through threads, and then she realizes... And I don't know if this is, like, an important part of the book or not, because I don't remember it connecting to anything, but she realizes that word marks are a way of harnessing the thread's weaving and binding essences. And the same way, like, the way that word marks work is the same way that she can create and shape her magic. So I guess it's a moment of her, like, kind of accepting her power, maybe. But I don't know if it, like, also transfers on the other side of her, like, understanding word marks better, maybe.
Yeah,
like,
that's, yeah.
It must be a moment of both, because she has a real good handle on word marks in the next book. But yeah, she then starts to wonder what would happen if she just walked through the fire, and there's, like, a voice in her head telling her to, like, just walk through the fire. And Rowan starts telling her that's enough, but she can't really hear him. And he grabs her arms, but he, like, hisses because he's being burned. And she's just enthralled by the fire and the music. And Rowan tells her to look at him, and she can barely hear him, and there's pounding, and she feels pain. And he tells her to let the fires burn on their own. And she hears fear in his voice, and it takes too much effort, but she actually looks at him. And he tells her to stop again, and she tries to talk, but she can't. And she can't move her body, and he tells her to let go or she'll burn out completely. And she wonders if this is the end of her power, and then she feels relieved. I guess she kind of realizes that she's, like, on the verge of roasting herself from the inside out. Yikes. And she ends up collapsing, right? Like, oof. She ends up collapsing on the grass, and the fires flare up, so we hope there's no one above them. And she, with her magic, tries to grab the fires again, but Rowan takes away her air, and she ends up passing out because, like, obviously he doesn't want her to use more magic.
Yeah.
And he actually says sorry before he did it, which I kind of appreciated because, like, he's not the type.
Oh my god,
to say sorry. Yeah. She wakes up, we're assuming, like, seconds later, and she's on the ground, and she still feels the burning, and she's in so much pain, and Rowan goes to get a healer, and the healer says they need to get her in cold water now. So Rowan picks her up, and he hisses again, and she grasps onto the pine and snow smell of him, and breathes him in.
Which we get this quite a lot, his pine and snow smell. And yes. I say again, what the hell does snow smell like?
Yeah.
We are surrounded by it a lot.
This wasn't from Blood and Ash, wasn't it? Snow. The smell of snow?
Yes!
Yeah.
Oh my god. So we've had this conversation.
We have, yeah.
What the hell does snow smell like?
Yeah, I don't know. It's summer now. Well, it's summer, fall. But what does water smell like?
Nothing!
Yeah. No. Pine has a smell.
Pine has a very distinct smell.
And you know what? Snow in the winter, in the forest, when I start breathing that, I feel like I can't breathe because it's so cold. So maybe it smells like asthma. Maybe that's what he smells like, pine and asthma. So, he brings her to a tub, they put her in it, and it helps for a second, but then he pulls her out again, and it's lucky he does because it ends up boiling. So they put her in another tub, and Rowan starts freezing it, like, as she's heating it with her body. Which, you're like, obviously you should have done that with the first tub, instead of just, like, reacting and pulling her out. Like, I don't This should have been your thought all along. But
I guess he didn't realize that she would boil the water.
I know, but she, like, burnt the grass when she fell down. She burnt him on her way. Like, he's literally... Maybe he was like...
Just get her off of me because she's burning me?
Yeah, because she's burning me, yeah. Maybe. And then he had to pick her up out of boiling water and was like, well, fuck my hands too, I guess. So yeah, they kind of go back and forth with the boiling and freezing until it stops. Like, she stops melting it as fast. Each time it's slower and slower. And then eventually the water is warm, not hot. A healer then says they need to get her clothes off. I don't really understand why. Like, I read it, and I was like, there has to be a reason. I think it's just plot. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing I could think of is that they need to, like, check her for injuries, or, like, because she's overheated, maybe they don't want her to have the extra layers on.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I was just like, you could leave her in her underwear, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just seems...
Although,
I don't think we need to take all our clothes off.
In this world, are underwear a thing?
That's true.
Because, like, in old-timey days, they didn't wear underwear.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair. Yeah. She also doesn't care about having her clothes off in front of him, which I think is bold. Like, she's such a ballsy person, and I love it.
Yeah. But I also think it's an odd choice, because remember, like, was it last week? They ran a whole bunch, and then she had to change, and she didn't want him to see her last week?
Yeah. But that was the specific reason that we get this week, but, like, she's not thinking about that because she's burnt out.
I guess. Yeah.
Quotation marks. But yeah, she's just thinking, like, obviously Rowan has seen so many women's bodies that, like, this is not a thing to him, so yeah. I don't care.
Yeah.
Which is fair. She's also in a medical situation, and, like, yeah. So they obviously take off her clothes, and she's just, like, floating on her back in the water and, like, trying to be okay. And Rowan asks her for yes or no answers, and he asks if she's in danger of flaring up again, and she says no, and he asks if she's in pain, and she says yes. So the healer goes to prepare a tonic, and Rowan tells her she should have told him that she was at her limit and was near burnout, because it, like, burnout can destroy you. Basically, like, if you burn out, you can die.
Yeah.
He tells her she needs to learn to recognize it and to pull back. And he tells her she can't touch her magic until she rests for a while. And she just nods. But she's also kind of thinking, like, it all came on very quickly. And she also doesn't know how to recognize burnout. Like, how would she?
Yeah.
How would anybody? But yeah, so he then goes to check on the tonic, and she ends up leaning over to hug her knees, and then the door opens, and she can hear Rowan walking back, and then he stops halfway across the room, and his breath catches, and she looks over her shoulder at him, and he's looking at her back, and he asks, "Who did that to you?" Sorry, it's not funny, but it's, like, one of those lines that is, like, so popular
cliche.
Right now. And, like, this one came out probably before it was really cliche, if you think about it.
Yeah.
But it is so cliche right now.
But I love this part.
Yeah. And also...
Go.
Sorry.
Just
no, I was going to say, I love this in almost every book I read it in this line. I love this line.
Yeah.
But yeah, this part of this book, you go.
No, I just love that he, like, it's fine. He's finally, like, realizing that, like, she's not a pampered princess. And, like, realizing that she has, like, legit real trauma, and, like, maybe I shouldn't have been such an ass.
Yeah. And, like, he comes to that reckoning quickly.
Yeah.
But that's not really what it looks like to her, and we'll get to that. But she thinks she's too tired to lie to him, so she says, like, a lot of people did it to her, and she tells him that she spent time in the salt mines of Endovier, and he knows what Endovier is, so, like, that's kind of a big deal to be on a different continent and know, like, obviously he realizes how shitty that is if he knows about it. But he asks how long, And she's looking for the pity in his eyes, but all she sees is lethal rage.
Oh.
And she says that she was there a year before, and then she just, like, is kind of too tired, and she's like, it's a long story. And she is looking at him, and she sees, like, the bandages on his arm and his chest, and she realizes that she, like, literally burnt him while he brought her here.
Mm-hmm.
And he asks if she was a slave, and she nods, and his rage disappears, and he leaves, and she just sits there thinking, oh, he thinks that I deserved that. Which is just like...
It just makes me want to cry. Like, even us just talking about it, I'm, like, near tears. Not near, like, they're on the verge of coming out.
That's fair.
It's but so sad. She
obviously he
herself.
doesn't think that. He doesn't think that.
No, but she hates herself.
She does. She really hates herself.
Her self-loathing is on a completely different level.
It's wild.
Than anybody else's self-loathing.
Yeah. And, like, he obviously didn't help it with how shitty he has been, but, like...
There's no need.
There's no need. But also, I don't know. Like, they've progressed a bit in their relationship. I'm like, I think you should know that that's not why. It's okay. But anyway. But,
like, okay, so my thing is, I feel like she should understand just from the fact that it went from rage to calm.
Especially since she's, like, the queen of killing calm.
Yeah. So, like, I feel like her being able to see the rage first should have been an indicator that, oh no, he doesn't think I deserve it. He's mad on my behalf.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, I completely agree. It's like, she, literally, that is her whole thing, is like, when she gets to rage, she plateaus, and then she's calm as shit, and then she murders everybody that ever existed, and will not stop. Yeah. Like, that is her jam. If you've read when she went after Chaol, and if you read Assassin's Blade, it's in there.
Yeah.
Like, it's her MO. We go back to, well, not back. We go to Rowan's point of view now. And he's flying fast, and he's thinking of her back, but he's seen worse. But when he saw them, his heart had stopped. And there was an overwhelming silence in his mind, his magic, and his warrior instinct both rose up. His magic and warrior instinct both rose up to rip whoever did it apart. But he just left and shifted immediately into his HoF form.
Because that's the proper thing to do.
Which is just interesting, because do you think he's like, do you think he knows in this moment?
No.
And he's like, can't deal.
No.
Bye-bye.
No,
okay.
I don't.
Okay. But he's flying, and he thinks Maeve lied to him by omission, and he remembers the time that we've talked about multiple times already, Aelin losing it at him, threatening to whip her, and he thinks he should have known better, but he was too proud, and he thought that she was just a child.
Yeah.
Which is, like, the bullshit that we've been talking about all
So was that week 1, or it must have been week 2, I feel like. That, yeah, so, like, he threatened to whip her, like, he was like, shift, and then he said, and she was like, no, and he was like, well, I'll whip you, and she was like, you will be dead before you raise a hand at me, and she, like, lost her shit and, like, abandoned him. And was that when she ran away? Was it that?
That wasn't the reason she ran away, was it?
Maybe not.
I can't remember. She had reasons for everything she did.
Yeah.
But I can't remember which one were...
Yeah. And, like, that must suck for him to be, like, it's almost like one of those things where you, like, like, obviously it's worse, but, like, you know how it would be almost like making a, like, your mom joke and then being like, my mom is dead? Yeah. Like, I feel like it's a similar thing. Like, he's threatening to whip her and then being like, oh, already happened.
Yes.
Right? So, like, he must feel really awkward right now.
Yeah, that's his problem. He feels that. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Yeah. It's not a great move. He obviously feels, I guess he does feel embarrassed. You're right. Like, he feels like even just admitting that he was too proud and thinking that she was a child, like, I think that is his issue. Like, she's 18. I get why he thinks she's a child. I think 18-year-olds are children. So, it's hard.
Yeah.
But he is on his way basically to Dornell to demand answers from Maeve, but he realizes that, like, if he gets there, she might just force him to stay away from Aelin and tell him no answers. So he's like, I'm just gonna stop here and go back. And another thing he realizes is that, like, Aelin didn't trust him to tell him about Endovier, and now she is almost burnt out, and she's defenseless, and a primal anger takes over, and he feels a territorial, possessive need, not for her, but to protect her. And he realizes that he didn't handle this like he should have.
No shit.
Right? And he knows that she'll think the worst of him leaving, obviously, which she did, like we just talked about. And he turns back, and he knows, like, he'll get answers soon enough from Maeve. Like, he really shouldn't have tried to fly to her in the first place. But it is interesting, like, his first instinct was like, I need to go get all of the answers from her.
Yeah.
I
also like too that he ended up thinking better of it. He was like, no.
Yeah, because realistically, she could have easily been like, and now you need to stay here and be a hawk on my shoulder forever.
Yeah.
So we go back to Celaena's point of view, and she had the tonic, and she stayed in the bath until her teeth chattered, and then she went to her room, and she can't stop thinking about Rowan leaving, and she can't sleep because of it, basically. But then her window opens, and he flies in, shifts, and picks her up, blankets and all, and brings her to his room and puts her in his bed, and tucks another quilt around her. And he tells her that she's staying in his room from now on, and he'll get a cot for her. Does he ever get a cot for her?
I don't think he
does.
Don't think the cot thing ever works out. I think they just share a bed.
Platonically.
Yes, very platonically, and we're being serious.
We are being serious.
Hanky-panky that goes on in this book ever.
No. So he gets in bed with her, and she says she doesn't want his pity, but he says it's not pity, and he says Maeve didn't tell him. And she slides a hand over and holds his, and she tells him she knows he didn't know. And at first she didn't want him mocking her for it, because, like, obviously she sees this as a fault, like going to Endovier, being a slave, as, like, a fault of character or something, which is wild, and she shouldn't.
Yeah.
But then she says she didn't want his pity or to use it as an excuse, and he says, like a good soldier, and she, like, feels a bit of pride at that. And he asks her to tell him how...
Like, how it happened.
Yes, thank you. That was a full sentence. Yeah, he asks her to tell him how, and she rallies and, like, literally tells him everything that happened in Assassin's Blade to Crown of Midnight. Like, everything. About Sam, Endovier, Chaol, Dorian, competition, like, everything.
I feel like this would take ages.
I know, I'm like, there's not enough time in one night for you to tell
your
entire
backstory.
Fucking hours to read those 3 books. She does leave out, like, the king and the word keys, like, that kind of shit she leaves out. But
yeah, because
she literally tells him everything else.
Yeah, because he's still bound to Maeve, so she can't tell him anything, like, anything of value, like, politically.
Yes. Yeah. So, I guess it's not quite as long as us reading those 3 books.
Well,
but...
and we also have to read about, like, different point of views and stuff, too.
Yeah. Yeah. So they end up falling asleep, and she wakes up, and Rowan is still holding her hand to his chest. And she feels something molten rush through her, forcing the cracks inside of her, like the broken pieces of her, together. Which is like, she's starting to heal. Like, this is the moment.
So nice.
It is so nice. Rowan doesn't let her get out of bed the next day. He gets food brought to her. Emrys and Luca visit, but like one growl from Rowan and they are gone. And right? Celaena feels shitty. Like, obviously still so shitty after her burnout that she is like, it's okay, I'll let him fuss about me. Like, I still have a headache and I just feel like shit. She asks him if every time a female gets close to burnout, the males go berserk, and he tells her he isn't even acting that crazy. Like, not crazy, but he's not even that bad. Yeah, he's not acting that bad. And he knows she can physically defend herself if she has no magic, which is much more than most Fae can do.
Right.
Which is kind of what started the issue in the beginning when magic disappeared. Like, yeah.
Well, especially the ones in Terrasim, because we already heard from Rowan that they relied very heavily on their magic.
Yeah. So you can only imagine how, like, worse he would be fussing if she didn't have her base of self-preservation and, what's that word? Defense. Self-defense. Yeah. She asks him about burnout because, like, she really only learned about magic until she was 8 and didn't have a good education about it, as we've already talked about.
Yep.
And he basically says you use all of your magic and then that's it. And then you're completely defenseless, basically. But he tells her about Karanon. And that is when 2 people are compatible, one person can lend their power to the other, but the only way to find out if you're compatible is to try. So, like, you need to share a blood connection. Like, and I'm guessing that's just you both cut yourself and hold your hands or something. Yeah. And you would still only be able to use your own power. Like, you couldn't actually start using their power, because obviously they have different powers. So it's like a power source, basically, that you can use somebody else. But it's very rare, as are all things in the SJM universe. And there needs to be trust, because one of the partners could take too much power or shatter the other person's mind by, like, using up everything. Or they could both burn out. So, like, you can't really have this kind of relationship one-sided. But he does say that Maeve has outlawed forced bonds, so no one can use someone to steal magic. So he's actually had to hunt down people who were forced into Karanon bonds and who are basically just shells of themselves, and the most merciful thing to do was to kill them. So it's, like, very shitty. Mm-hmm. She kind of changes the subject here. And as the, like, I don't know, like, I need a second to think of how to phrase this. But, like, as the, not badass, but, like, she knows she's beautiful. Confident. Yeah. But it's not even just confident, like, it's a fact. She knows she's beautiful. Yeah. That is just a fact. But she asks him which of his little cadre is the handsomest, and if they would fancy her. And he says the thought of her with them makes his blood run cold, and they wouldn't know what to do with her, and it would end in bloodshed. And she asks about his little kitty cat friend, who's the one that came to get tattooed. And he basically just says that, like, none of them would have any interest in her since she'll be old soon and not worth the effort to win her. And I'm like, damn, like, that would destroy all of my confidence. But, like, it obviously doesn't hurt because she just knows it as a fact. And, like, I appreciate that as her, like, it is her character trait. She knows she is hot. But, like,
I guess my big issue is that, like, how do they know she's gonna get old soon?
Well, yeah.
Like,
he's just making assumptions.
She's a demi-fae.
As we've said a few weeks ago, I don't really understand her lineage. Because, like, she got water from one side, fire from the other side. Neither of her parents is full fae.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I don't know. I don't understand the percentages or what is happening or anything. So she ends up just calling him a killjoy, which is better than I would have done. And then she, like, basically gets into bed, I think. So he gets to bed later and he looks at her wrists and her back, and he tells her, like, a healer could likely heal the scars. And she tells him that there are cells in Endovir where they would lock you in the absolute dark, and they had her in one for 3 weeks straight. And the only way she made it through was by saying her name over and over. And it was, I am Celaena Sardathian. And when she'd get out, she said so much of her brain would have shut down that all she would remember was that she was Celaena. She was arrogant, brave, and skilled with a weapon. And they would break you in the mines, not just kill you. And she tells him that she will save everyone in the mines, regardless of what she does with her birthright. So her scars are a reminder. So, like, it's like I don't know. There's so much to it all. Like, it's so shitty. Like, the little glimpses we get into Endovir are even worse than in the first book when we're there. Oh, this sounds bad. Like, you get more into it and you're like 3 weeks in, like, a pit of hell. Like, I would not survive that.
Well, it's like, it's just one of those things where, like, we can't even verbalize how, like, awful it is and how it hits us right in the feels because it is so emotional. Like, it's so hard to even, like, to explain how awful it is. Yeah. Just to even read it.
I just, like, you can't even fathom 3 weeks. Like, I know this is something that people face in, like, prison systems and stuff, like being stuck in solitary confinement, and it is inhumane and it is not okay. And I can't even fathom it. I can't.
Yeah.
It's wild. But yeah, so that's how she got through, and, like, you can kind of understand why she is, like, she wants to be Celaena. Celaena is strong. Aelin, in her mind, is an 8-year-old who couldn't control her power, who wasn't given a chance to be able to control her power, and who didn't have any tools. So, like, she doesn't want to go back to that because now she, as Celaena, has power, and she has weapons, she has tools, and she can kill people, yes, but, like, not that that is everything, but, like, she can protect herself where she couldn't before. So it's important to her. Rowan asks her what happened 10 years ago, but she refuses to tell him. And she says it wasn't just her parents' deaths that she can't talk about. There was another woman. And she tells him that there's a rage living inside of her that she's kept locked up. And if she talks about that, like, the rage will come out and there will be no accounting for it. And she may burn the world for spite. And he says he doesn't think that she would.
No.
But, like, we all don't think she would either.
No.
But he does tell her that she likes to suffer and she wants the proof. Because he's been doing the same thing for 200 years. And he asks if she thinks she's going to be, like, going to go to a blessed afterworld or hell. And he says he's betting that she's hoping for hell because she doesn't want to face them. And she just says, like, that's enough. And, like, closes her eyes because she doesn't really want to admit it to him or herself at this point. Like, she's still only 18. Like, she's had 10 years to deal with this. He's had 200. Like, there is...
Oh, yeah, big difference.
Yeah. So he actually starts petting her hair. And she almost purrs, she thinks, because she actually hasn't been touched in a while by, like, a friend or a lover, and, like, she's missed it. Which is completely fair. And he tells her he's sure she'll free the slaves one day, no matter what name she uses. And she thanks him for taking care of her, and she puts a hand on his chest. Aww. So it's a cute moment. Like, they're really doing something. Like, they're...
Yeah, it's wild that this all came about just from her burning out and then him seeing her scars.
Yeah.
Like, if she just told him about the scars earlier, maybe he wouldn't have been such a dick.
Yeah, but I think she needed to hit rock bottom, as cliche as that is. Yeah. Like, I think she needed all of it. But yeah. So she ends up spending a few more days in his room without being able to leave. And her birthday comes around, and she turns 19. Just so fucking young. What a baby.
Why can't we turn 19 again?
I don't want to turn 19.
No, I don't either.
Okay. Rowan ends up finding a new body, which is the same as all of the other ones, and he goes out to see it, and he won't let her go, but he does bring her back chocolates for her birthday, and she tries to hug him, but he is not having it. So she ends up, like sneakily giving him a kiss on the cheek, which I'm like, that is more intimate than a hug.
Yeah. He's like, no, I don't want your hugs. I don't love me.
Yeah. Their next session, he tells her her magic doesn't have a shape. Therefore, she has no control. And he tells her she has an advantage, though, because she knows weapons. And he asks her the first thing she learned when she trained. And she says defense. And he just says good.
That is true.
And
the best offense is a good defense.
Yes.
I don't actually know if that's the right phrase, but I'm saying it.
Sounds right.
Great.
It made me think of hockey.
Awesome.
That's all I know about offense and defense.
Oh my god, I'm a sports whiz.
You are. I guess football, similar for American listeners.
Yes. The football. American football.
American football. Not the soccer.
Not Europe.
Not the football European.
Not European
for
football.
Our European listeners. Which also has offense and defense.
Does it? I don't know. I don't watch sports.
Did you not? You not play soccer as a kid? Do your kids play soccer?
Listen,
your kids play soccer. There's offense and defense.
I played enough soccer.
There's also midfield.
No, listen.
What's happening?
Listen. You are getting way too complicated. When I played soccer as a kid for just public league soccer, there were 5 people on the field. There were no rules about where you could go. You could go wherever you wanted on the fields. And there was a goalie. So 6 total on the field. Then I had a moment of madness when I was like in 9th or 10th grade or something. Mm-hmm. And a friend of mine was joining a soccer league. And I was like, I'll join too. So I also joined. I don't know why we didn't request to be on the same team, because it would have made a load of difference, but we didn't. So we obviously weren't put on the same team. So I was on this team with a bunch of, and it was like a both sex team.
Oh my god.
There were high school players on the team, obviously, so ones that were like really dedicated.
Also men.
And all of a sudden, there was like 10 people on a field. And like there were rules. Like if you were in the back by the net, you could not go past a certain point.
Yeah.
If you're in the middle, then you're the one that has to throw the ball. And you got to throw the ball to certain people. And I did not understand it because literally the only soccer/football I ever played was 5 people on the field plus a goalie. I had no idea what I was at. I think I went to 2 games and then I was like, peace out. And I just didn't do it anymore. And then the coach was like, everybody's got to take a turn in net. And I was like, no.
No.
I was like, no, thank you.
Hard pass.
And, like, there was literally a guy with, like dark, hairy, like, huge legs that could run up and down the field in, like, 30 seconds on my team. And everybody just called him Legs.
Amazing.
It was terrifying.
Of course, yeah.
I don't even think I had cleats. I think I had sneakers. And, like, everybody else was, like, very into it. And it was a mistake.
Yeah. Amazing.
Not amazing.
No. But amazing now, not amazing at the time.
No. And, like, it was weird. It was really awkward because then at the end of the year, they still called me and asked me to, like, come to the year-end, like, they were, like, going for pizza or something. And I was like, thanks for the invite, but no.
Yeah. No, that's fair. No, I was in, like, the public soccer until I was in high school, so I graduated to all of those levels.
Well, like, the little kid soccer that my kids do is just 5 kids. Actually, it's 4 kids on the field plus a goalie. It's just, like, a free-for-all.
Yeah, because they're little kids.
Yeah, and that's the extent. And then when you go into and you play it in gym class, they only do 5.
Yeah.
So that was the extent of my knowledge.
Completely
for all sports. Yeah. It's always 5 on the floor and 1 in goal.
Even if it's 5, there's an offense and there's a defense, which is where we started this conversation. Like, the 3 in the middle are the offense, the 2 are defense, and then the goalie.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just gonna call you Sporty McSportface.
Oh, listen. I get hit in the face with so many balls. That is not even fucking funny. Like, every sport I ever played. Like, Frisbee.
Frisbee?
Hit in the face. I do not have that awareness of, like, catch in front of the face. Like, it's just... No, I can't.
I got hit in the face a lot, too, in gym class, because the gym teacher would throw the ball at me, and I would not be paying attention, and he'd be like, Christian! And then he'd throw it, and then I'd turn towards it, and it'd be like, bang, right in the face. I'm like, dude, wait till I'm looking at you before you throw a ball at my face.
Oh, well, that seems like something he should have known better. Like, that is so dumb. Yes, I agree. I think he should have known better. Okay. Back to Rowan and Celaena Aelin.
Yeah. Celaena.
Celaena. Yes. So, no, we can't have another fucking name for her. Jesus Christ. Oh, God.
Celaena Lillian.
Celaena.
Celaena, yeah. Combo of Celaena, Aelin, and Vivian.
Lillian. Wasn't it? It was Lillian.
It was Lillian, but for some reason I always think it's Vivian. I don't know why.
It's fine. It doesn't, that name gets lost in the first book and never comes
It's true,
back.
yeah.
Yes. So, Rowan starts throwing ice daggers at her, and she cannot get a shield to work. And he keeps, like, nicking her in the face, like, with his ice daggers on purpose. And you're like, this is just cruel. Like, I think there's a better way to teach her, but whatever, you're the teacher.
But I also feel like she does the best when she feels in danger.
She does, but I don't, like, it's just, she hates herself, let's injure her more. It's just, like, not where it should go. But it's fine. She does, yeah, it does work for her. He tells her to try harder, and she says she is, and he says she's acting like she's close to a burnout, and she says that it happened that fast on Beltane, and he says that wasn't the end of her power. She just fell into the lull of, like, I'm guessing the magic and the music, which is interesting, because, like, it feels like that gave her an epiphany, so it's like, maybe it wasn't a bad thing that she fell into the lull, but, like, obviously if she had ran through the fires, it would not have been good. But, like, maybe it wouldn't have been that bad, because, like...
I keep thinking of, like a Game of Thrones moment with Daenerys Targaryen, like, I know you haven't seen it, but she, like, emerges, she's, like, completely encased in flame. And then she emerges completely untouched. And I just feel like Aelin would be the same.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Because, like, if your power is fire, you'd think you'd protect yourself with fire.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. But, yeah, he says that she could have kept those fires burning for months. She just doesn't want her power to be that much. Like, she wanted her power to be insignificant. She wanted it to be that easy to get to the bottom of it. Which is true, like, after being in her head. So he keeps throwing his ice daggers and hitting her, and she keeps picturing the shields and her powers. Like, she's trying her best, and she's like, her power is hers to control, not the other way around. And then Rowan throws one right directly at her face, and it hisses into steam, and he smiles and he says that they're done, but she says no again. And I feel like this is like a turning point. It's like the montage, and this is like the
yeah,
you know what I mean?
I do.
Like, she actually wants to learn her magic now. Like, she wants to try harder. And a week passes, and she can hold multiple shields at once, even a larger one around the entire glen. And then one morning before dawn, she goes out on her own to practice, which is a big deal. So we go over to Manon's point of view now, and everything and everyone, I guess, is, like, working well. Mm-hmm. The training is going well, everything is going well except for Abraxos. He hasn't made the crossing with her yet. His flying has improved, and he actually did brawl with Lynn's bull, but he won, and that kind of, like, ended any of the, like, games of hierarchy games with the wyverns. So that's good. Manon ends up summoned to her grandmother's room, and her grandmother asks why she had to hear from Cressida, who is the blue blood matron, that Manon hasn't made the crossing, and she says if she hasn't made the crossing, she can't compete in the war games, which is their whole goal, because of that.
Yeah.
So I think that's just a rule in general. It has nothing to do with Manon, but, like, not great. So her grandmother ends up clawing Manon's face and calls her and Abraxos embarrassments, and she just wants her to win the games so that they can take their rightful place as queens of the waste. And she asks Manon if her heart has melted, which is impossible because she doesn't have one.
Yeah.
And you're like, ugh.
Why bother asking that question then?
Yeah. Then she asks her why she was informed that Iskra caught a Kraken witch spying on them. And she had to hear from other people. And Manon is just like, what? She's surprised by it too. She hadn't heard of that. But apparently the Yellowlegs have been interrogating her for 2 days. And Manon didn't know about it. Then her grandmother tells her that she will make the crossing tomorrow, and she doesn't care if she dies, but if she lives, she better win the games or else. And then she, like, slices a nail along Manon's neck to be like, if you don't win the games, you're gonna die. Which is a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So, the next day, everyone comes to watch Manon try the crossing. Astrid and Sorrel are beside their mounts, but they're not on them because they've been forbidden to save her like their plan was originally.
Yeah.
Which, so fucked up. Her grandmother yells at her to hurry, and she gets on Abraxos, but he refuses to move and growls at her grandmother, and Manon knows that it is a threat. And the rest of her 13 reach for their swords, and she's like, oh shit, they're ready to fight their way out of here if her grandmother gives the, like, word that Manon and Abraxos should be killed, which is wild. Like, they're really picking a side here, and they're picking Manon.
Which is glorious.
It is, and I think it's the first time that she's realized that, like, she actually has this following this.
Yeah, that they will be willing to, like, abandon Manon's grandmother for her.
Yeah. Astrid looks to her and nods, and she feels the same thing she felt when Iskra whipped Abraxos. You're like, it's fucking love. You're feeling love. Manon tells Abraxos he just has to make this jump once, and it'll shut them all up. And then from, like, the bowels of this mountain, they can hear the bait beasts beat their wings as if they understand what's happening. And then Astrid and the 13 join in with the beating. And Manon tells Abraxos, like, this is for him, and thinks it won't be too bad if she does die, because at least it'll be with Abraxos. Which is, like, a lot. But she tells him he's one of the 13 until darkness cleaves them apart. And he is hers, and she is his. And they run towards the drop. And the, like, Blue Bloods and the Blackbeak clan take up the beat. And the mountain shakes with it. And they go over and fall together. Then Abraxos balances out as the gap comes closer. He opens his wings, and they hold on, and he flies into the starry night. So it's a success.
Yay!
But it's like, sin.
I know, but, like, I love that that they communicate.
Me too, yeah.
So, back to, I guess it's a Rowan point of view. So, Rowan is watching Celaena on the battlement wall. So, she's down in front of those magical stone, the things that make the barrier around, around their little, I don't even know what to call it, fortress,
I guess. Yeah. Sounds right.
So she's training. So apparently she's been doing it for 4 days now. So she sneaks out in the morning.
Of his room, of his bed.
Yeah. And even, like, because she's still on breakfast duty. So that means she's waking up even before fucking breakfast duty. Which is, wild. Like, meaning she's probably waking up at, like, 3 o'clock in the morning. Which is insane.
No thanks.
Do not put me down for that.
No.
Anyway, so he thought that she was just getting up earlier to help with breakfast, But then when they were training, he noticed that she was like advancing and improving too quickly. So what she's been doing is she shoots her flames at the barrier, and then the barrier like repels the flame back to her, and then she uses that flame that she originally shot. She then like uses that and like fights at it as if it were a real thing. And like she's using magic attacks, so like making like shields and stuff with it, making fiery weapons. Sometimes she just like attacks like normally, like she's an assassin. So she's doing all kinds of different fighting techniques. And like Rowan is super impressed with her fighting skills, and he saw her get knocked down, but she got up again. Never gonna keep her down.
Fair.
He sort of expected her to like be like, okay, that's enough for today, but she just did it again. She just like was like, no, okay, and just got up and went again. So like she is impressing him more and more, I guess we'll say. So they keep training. Like, I guess we sort of have a little, like, I'm calling it a montage moment. Because, like, they just keep training throughout a few days. And he doesn't let up on her once. But, like, they both know that it wasn't a malicious intent. Like, he wasn't purposefully being, like, easy on her just because he was like, I don't like you. I'm not going to be easy on you. No. He knows that her enemies are not going to be easy on her, so why should he be? So, like, she said she noticed that their magic would play together. Like, sometimes her fire would tease his ice, and then his wind...
Tease his ice?
Yes! His rock-hard ice.
Oh! God.
And then sometimes his wind would dance with her embers. Anyway, so they still, like, they're sleeping together every night. Like, they're in the same bed. Again, like we said, the cot never comes. But
neither do they.
But she says there's nothing romantic about it. Like, she still dreams and reaches for Chaol in her sleep. Vomit. Why?
Yeah, not a big fan of this.
But then she says she realizes that she could never lie next to him again. It is good, but I feel like she should tell him that, because he's not aware of this.
Yeah, but she can't just text him. What's she supposed to do?
Send him a message via carrier pigeon?
Right.
Anyway, so they go to visit another body, and Pharaoh wonders aloud if maybe there's more than one creature, and that's why they keep finding so many bodies.
Wild.
Yeah, and they also notice that this body actually has defensive wounds, which other ones don't have. So Celaena scrapes, like, a dagger under the demi-phase nails to get the, like, residue.
This is CSI.
It is CSI. Yes, it's very Horatio Caine removing his sunglasses and saying a big old one-liner. Like, well, look like the fight just went out. Or, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. But I don't know what to say.
I liked it.
Anyway. So, apparently there's this, like, black, like, smelly residue underneath the nails. And she said it reminded her of the dude underneath the library that attacked her. And she, like, freaks out. So, Rowan asks her what it is. So then she tells him everything about the dude under the library, everything about the word keys, and all the stuff that Maeve won't tell her. So she actually does tell him everything.
Yeah, there's not very many secrets in this.
No. And apparently he's pissed, but says that he sort of thinks they have a theory as to why they keep attacking the Demi-Fae. And he thinks it's because they would make the perfect hosts. Because they can use...
Hosts of what?
Right? They can use their magic, but no one in Wendelin or in Dornell care whether they're alive or dead.
Which is very CSI, picking the people that nobody will look for.
It's like that episode of Criminal Minds, remember, with the pig farm?
Oh my god.
And the shoes.
Yeah.
They were
it's the
picking
same
up
as
homeless people.
The Benders, not the same, but like Supernatural, the Benders episode where they have all the cars and you're like...
Yeah. Anyway. So, they also think that maybe they're using these specific people, but they weren't compatible with the host. So they were drained dry and left to drum up fear. So, yeah. Rowan tells Celaena, although he calls her Aelin, to burn the body. And then he tells her that they are going hunting. Which is sort of like a little menacing, I feel like, to hear from him.
Yeah. Kind of love it.
So they look around, but they can't find, like, anything that they need. Or, like, any bad guys, I guess we'll say. So they climb a huge tree, and they just hang out on a branch for a night. And then she sort of recounts her story about the library creature, but I guess in greater detail. And then she thinks about Scummy McScumpants again. A.K.A. Chaol. And she said that she's worried that he sold the information he knows about her to the king. And that maybe the king sent one of his, like, minion-y dudes after her. And I'm like, and yet you still wake up wanting to be around him and you think he betrayed you? That's a terrible idea. Yeah.
That is something. We're going to trust a man that we think would sell us out to the king. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So she, like, was watching Rowan, and she knows he's attractive, and she said that she's just happy that he has no interest in her, because if he, if he was interested in her, then he would be able to convince her to, like, do the dirty.
Fair. Yeah.
So, but she's thinking to herself that, like, she still has such a huge hole in her chest from Chaol. And she says it feels like it's getting bigger and not smaller, which doesn't track, but she then asks Rowan about mates. And she's, like, trying to get clarification. So Rowan sort of tells her that, like, once you find them, you can't stomach hurting them at all, and you would sooner harm yourself. But she said that, like, well, she definitely hurt Chaol when she thought he was responsible for Nehemia's death. And she says that, like, I would have killed him if people didn't stop me. So, like, she was like, obviously I'm not mates with Chaol.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no shit.
Yes. Completely. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's just like, I get he had a mate, so he thinks he knows mates.
Yeah.
And that is hard when you reconcile that with later books.
Yeah. Anyway, he tells her then that, like, you know, that's not necessarily true. Like, you haven't been in your Fae form in 10 years. So, like, maybe your instincts are just, like, rusty and haven't taken hold. And she also said that, like, the meat bond won't snap into place until after intimate relations. Which is actually a bit different, I think, than other books.
I don't know, because it's like...
Well, like...
We've had...
But, like, think about it. In ACOTAR, Lucian spots Elaine and immediately knows that's his mate. No intimate relations took place there.
No, but the Winter Court, they've been friends for their entire lives, and then only after he came back from under the mountain.
Yeah. But again, so no intimate relations were necessary.
No. But there's just different...
And, like, Rhys knew immediately upon smell.
Yeah. 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 I think it's just...
different dimensions,
I think they're...
I guess. Like, different worlds, so it's slightly different.
Well, my big theory is that Crescent City has people from Akhtar and from Throne of Glass. Any shifters in Crescent City are from Throne of Glass because they have the second form, so they are shifters. Mm-hmm. Like the wolf shifter, like where the Danica was just a fae shifter. Like she wasn't...
She's not an actual werewolf.
Yeah, but in the books it made it seem like that was like... It made it seem like she wasn't really fae. She was just a shifter. But that literally just my theory. I don't know. There's, I guess we'll know in January.
So far away. And then we're going to read it immediately, and then we're going to be like, when's the next one?
Oh my god, so painful.
Yeah, and we'll have to wait 2 years for it.
Exactly.
So she sort of thinks that hoping for a mate is useless.
Fair.
So why is she asking? Anyway, so the next morning, Celaena, picks up the trail of blood from the last body that was found, and it leads them to a cliff, but there's nothing there. So they're, going to leave. But then, at the last minute, they spot a sort of, a staircase of worn rock leading to the beach. So, it's not really noticeable unless you sort of know what to look for, I guess. So they sort of look at the part of the coast that they're on, and it looks like it's safe for landing small boats, but not so great for big boats. So it's actually perfect for sneaking into the country. So they look and see that there's a whole bunch of networked caves on the shoreline. So they're like, when we get back, we'll take a look inside and see how it goes. So they're looking at this coastline, and they're thinking about how perfect it would be for small boats to sneak into the country, because it's not a watched watched coastline. So they could illegally get to the land. But on top of that, there are all of these caves along the shore, and obviously people can hide in those. So they decide they're gonna come back at night to have a look around. And I feel like that's not a part of me is yes, obviously it's dark, so you're less likely to be seen. But also we're not in a regular place. This is a magic-y world with creatures of all types. So I feel like the dark doesn't give them any extra security or safety. It's almost worse.
Yeah, it almost is worse. Yeah. Because, last time they were in the dark, she got chased by those people that wanted to use her skin as...
So, I feel like the dark is not necessarily the best option. But it's the one they go with. So, they go back that night, and turns out there's a host of Adarlanian soldiers coming out of the caves. And she says they have the reek, the smell of the library creature, but they don't have the madness the library creature have. So, obviously, whoever did that library creature, whoever created it, has perfected their craft.
Yeah, because we kind of think that the library creature was left behind because he was... Not conductive. It didn't work on him. He was, malfunctioning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Rowan changes into a hawk and goes to investigate, which I also don't understand, because, you would think that magic-y creatures would be able to,
smell that he's not a real hawk?
Yeah, would be able to sense, his fae presence. Mm-hmm. But I digress.
I thought the same.
Anyway, so he comes out and tells her there's a platoon of about 200 soldiers and 3 of the creatures. And I'm assuming they mean the nightmare creatures.
Would make sense.
Like, they don't really say, but that's what I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And Celaena wants to send word to Wendlin to, like, be like, hey, there are soldiers near us, and, like, we're a small little, like, fortress. There's obviously not that many people living there.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, please send reinforcements. Like, please send help.
Yeah. And I guess, like, I don't really understand the layout of this place, because, like, obviously there's Maeve's Dornell, like, her, like, island where she rules and only Fae can be there. But, like, then there's the outer spots, like, so, like, anything away from that, is that hers? Or, because, like, where they are now, Mistward is under her.
Yeah, so my thing is that I never thought of Dornell as, like, I thought it was just on the land with just, like, a moat.
Yes, yeah, I just meant, like, it's its own enclosed space. Yes, yeah,
okay.
yeah. Not an island, like, an island.
Yeah,
but,
so
like...
I feel like maybe she has a domain within a domain. Like, she's got Dornell as far as Mistward.
Yeah.
And then, on, like, that is all encased in the country of Wendlin.
Okay.
That's my thought.
Yeah.
Like, she has her little chunk within Wendlin. Because they obviously can't take it from her.
No. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. It's just, I'm not one that loves a map or anything. I do find it weird that there is no map of this area. It's just like the sea too. I'm pretty sure that's all it says in the book. I think I looked at it because I was like, oh, I don't really, because I didn't even really realize that it was like a moated area until the end of this book.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, you would think we would have a map of Wendlin since we're on Wendlin.
Yeah, and I can't remember, but like when Rowan talks to her about all the different places he's been, she's like, oh, I've never been to any of these places. It's like this world is giant and we don't really have a map to it. It makes me wonder, like, what does that mean? Is there going to be more to it? But
yeah.
Who knows?
Anyway, so Celaena wants to, like, ask Wendlin for help.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess her and Rowan chat, and they figure out that it would take way too long for soldiers to get there. And, like, I don't really understand what makes them think that they're gonna, like, I'm assuming they see all these soldiers and they're like, oh, well, I guess they're gonna attack us. But I don't understand what makes them think that the attack is coming soon. Because they have no idea how long the people have been there.
Well, and obviously they've been there longer than not
like, they've
long.
been there as long as Aelin because they've been finding those bodies.
Exactly. So, like, yeah. I don't know why they would assume that it's happening soon either.
Yeah. Anyway.
Doesn't really make sense.
No. But, anyway, the point is, Wendlin soldiers won't be able to get to them in time because apparently they've been up north all spring, like, guarding a different part.
I guess against the Autolanian soldiers, because they assumed they'd come that way. Even though they have so much unprotected coastline, they could just come from anywhere.
Yeah. So Rowan sort of tells her, like, to think, where does this area lead to? So it obviously leads to the fortress. So they're only just now figuring out that that the soldiers are there specifically to grab the demi-fae. And that all of these bodies have been experiments or to wipe out everyone so that they can't fight against Aderlin. So I guess the demi-fae have a unique sort of experience where they have magic to fight against, but they also have, like, physical skills.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess demi-fae are scary to the Aderlanians.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Which you're like, that's why they got rid of the magic in the first place.
Yeah. But, like, and then there was something about how, like, the demi-fae are specifically formulated, like, they think that they are more susceptible to that change, that, like, reek, like, turning them like them. So Celaena decides that, like, she's like, let's go down right now and let's just like unleash our magic on them and wipe all the soldiers out.
Mm-hmm.
But Rowan's like, well, we can't because there are word marks protecting them from magic, and all the soldiers are wearing as much iron as possible.
So they're kind of expecting that.
Yeah. And he also says, like, he knows what the general's name is, the guy in charge of the soldiers. His name is Narok, and he is apparently the shell of a man, but evil. So, like, he looks like a man, but he radiates pure evil.
Yeah. And that's the one that Murtagh asked Adian and Chaol if they knew who he was.
Yeah.
Because he was, like, terrorizing.
So, I guess Rowan figured out when he was, in the caves sniffing out info that Narok is sending the creatures out to get him Demi-Fae, and then they bring it back for him to experiment on. And apparently there's a woman in there right now, but there's nothing they can do to help her. So they just have to leave with the knowledge that this poor woman is being essentially tortured, and they cannot help her.
Like, I don't know which one's better, but, like, she's either going to be killed or she's going to be made into something else. So it's like, it's probably better to die, but that's, like, best case scenario for her is she's going to die. Like, that's not good.
Yeah. So they walk away, and they're thinking about, well, what can they do? Because the soldiers from Wendlin will obviously take too long. There are only about 30 people in Mistward that can fight, and there's 200 soldiers there.
Mm-hmm.
And all the townspeople nearby are just fishermen and farmers, so they can't fight. And in honesty, would they choose to fight with
Demi-Fae? Yeah.
When they're not really in danger?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they're not coming for the village, they're coming for Mistward.
Yeah.
So they are walking away, and they notice that one of the creatures is following them. So they split up and wait for it. And she's, I guess, Celaena sees it. And she said it looks just like the library creature, but it's way more polished. So Rowan, like, doesn't want them to use magic on it because it might attract attention.
Mm-hmm.
So the creature gets to them and smells her and takes a step towards her before vanishing. So, like, it's scary.
Yeah.
I would have peed my pants.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, like, she is worried because obviously they can't see the creature. And she's sort of more worried. The creature seems to be closer to Rowan, and she starts to freak out. But then she's, like, holding a dagger and sees in the reflection of the dagger that the creature is, like, right behind her.
So creepy.
It is so creepy. So she turns to attack it, but, like, she makes eye contact with him, and she just freezes. Like, her magic sputters out, the dagger falls from her hands, like, she is completely helpless. The creature had a hood up and lowers it, and apparently it's, like, a beautiful young man. But he's got a chunk of wordstone around his neck, and he looks like death incarnate.
So creepy.
So, yeah. But, like, it's unfortunate, because, like, you would think that you see a handsome man, you're like, ooh.
Yeah.
Not in this case.
No, not at all.
So he recognizes her immediately as the one that got away. So, turns out he's the one that in the, like, remember when they were in the
whites.
The marsh?
Yeah.
Or something? And, like, he tells her, oh, yeah, cross it, and I'll let you go to Maeve, and she tries, and then she ends up, like, experiencing Nehemia's death and her parents' death, and then she freaks out.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out this is from that guy.
Good times.
And he says that her agony tastes like wine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You say so.
Yeah. So she's going through this process now, like she's caught in his net, we'll say, and she wants the creature to take everything from her and have her surrender to the dark. But then a flash of silver and a creature made of fangs and rage and wind ripped her away. So obviously it's Rowan. So she couldn't break free from the creature, so Rowan bites her in the neck.
Ooh, of course.
Ooh.
Of course he does.
So, like, this is the second time he did it. The first time he did it was very, like, aggressive and, like, I am your dominant.
Mm-hmm.
This time, I think it was more of a snap out of it.
Yeah, like physical pain will take you away from your mental anguish.
Although, like, he could have bitten her anywhere. Why is he biting her in the neck? Could have bit her arm.
Face level. Yeah, he's a vampire. His second form is a vampire.
Love it. Anyway, so the pain helps, like, snap her out of it. And, like, she said that's why the other bodies had defensive wounds. Like, they were, like, hurting themselves to try and snap them out of the stupor.
Mm.
So, obviously they need to run. So, the creature outmatches them in every way. So, Celaena creates, like, a wall of fire so that they can run and get some distance. And they run for miles, and they can hear the creature following them. But, like, they obviously can't run back to the fortress, because, like, the creature will just go back to the fortress.
Yeah.
So they run into the mountains. And Celaena's like, shit, like, this thing has my scent now, and, like, knows the taste of my pain. So, like, it's not gonna stop hunting me. So she comes up with a plan. And this is what I love about her so much. She comes up with these amazing plans, like, at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
Like, in extreme situations. And I don't understand how she can do it.
No. She's a quick thinker.
Yeah. I am not that quick.
No.
So, she tells Rowan to distract the creature with her scent on her tunic. And she lights a fire and sharpens her dagger until a different creature shows up. So she sent Rowan away with her tunic so that the creature follows Rowan.
Mm-hmm.
She stayed behind and lured skinwalkers to her. And then she taunts them and runs away towards where she told Rowan to lead the other creature. I feel like we can sense what's happening here.
Yeah.
So she gets to the spot, she hides behind a tree, and Rowan comes up and, like flattens himself against her. So she's, like, right up against the tree, and, like, he's right up against her. And then he shields her and, like, uses his wind magic to, like, send her scent, like, further down. And then they climb up the tree and shelter up there. So Rowan, and, like, they gotta cuddle real tight because Rowan has to be, like, all around her to, like, mask her scent.
Has to.
Yes. And, like, how did she come up with all of this? Like, in, 10 seconds.
Yeah, don't.
So, and they essentially just listen to the monsters fight each other all night long. And she says, it seems like somebody wins because at some point, it stops.
Mm-hmm.
So then they go back to the fortress and they tell everybody what's coming. So Malachi does decide to ask the Wendelin King for aid.
Mm-hmm.
And tells other demi-fae settlements in the area to flee. And he asks for the healer's tower to evacuate.
It's kind of what you said, though. I don't really understand why they're like, we're going to be attacked immediately. Like, did Rowan hear something? Like, I just don't get it.
Yeah, like, I feel like the reason why they are attacked
is because of this.
Is because they're prepping for an attack.
Yeah. I could see them attacking them because now they know that Aelin is there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. Anyway. So they decide to assist because, again, like, there aren't that many fighters in Mistward. So they decide they're going to put traps and snares all along the path to slow the soldiers down. Genius idea.
Mm-hmm.
Rowan is like super capable. Like, he's in his element now when he's planning and plotting battle strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So Celaena says that she feels at ease. Like, he makes her feel better. Like, and she says it's kind of like she can finally breathe after months of suffocating, which is just like
yeah.
And she asks him why he hasn't called his cadre for help. So, like, those are his buddies that are all also
slaves to Maeve.
Yeah. Because they're all super duper powerful and they could help with the creatures.
Mm-hmm.
And he says it's because, like, if he sent for them, Maeve would obviously know.
Mm-hmm.
And she would order him to come home just to spite the Demi-Fae. And, like, leave them all unprotected.
Yeah.
And Celaena's actually, like, really a bit disgusted that, like, this is the person he's chosen to pledge his life to. And, like, I have to agree.
Of course, yeah.
But she's like, he's too good for her. Is what she's like, you're too good for Maeve. And, like, a part of me is like, yes, but also he's been a dick almost this entire book.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, this read through has honestly changed my opinion of Rowan a little bit.
Yeah, I get that. They're both just so broken. Like, it kind of less colors how I see him, because he was just like, yeah, I'll serve Maeve because I want to die. That's why he agreed to it. It kind of makes me wonder, like, about the rest of his cadre. Like, I almost want each story of, like, why they...
Oh my god. That would actually be amazing.
Because, like, I know we get some of it. Like, we find out some of the reasons that they decide to join. But, like, I just don't understand why others of them would join.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want all the stories. I want to know everything. Give me everything.
We want, like, a Similarion, like, Lord of the Rings style, but for this world.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, so she leaves thinking that she wished that he would come with her to Adarlan and then to Terrasin, but he has obviously no way to break the blood oath to Maeve.
Yeah.
And she has no, like, queendom to offer him. Like, there's no way that she could replace Maeve for him.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting thought. So, the next afternoon, she felt like an unbearable silence fall over the keep and thought Maeve was there to take Rowan away. And she was, like, really, really scared. But, so, like, she goes to investigate. Maeve isn't there. But she could tell that, like, there was really bad news. And she waited for Rowan to tell her. And she's, like, freaking out a little bit before she even knows.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that Calicula, whatever, the sister camp to Endovir, had an uprising after a slave girl killed her overseer after Nehemia was killed. So that actually happened at the end of the last book.
Yeah.
We got that epilogue of the girl, like, hearing that Nehemia was dead, and then she, like, freaked out, like, she got really upset, and she killed her overseer.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, there was a huge uprising in the camp itself. So then the king of Adarlan sent 2 legions to take back control of the camp, and they just decided to kill all of the slaves.
Yeah.
And they killed everybody in Calicula and everybody in Endovir too, just for good measure.
Yeah.
Which is thousands upon thousands of people.
Yeah. And, like, Celaena literally just said that she wants to save them. Like, that is why she keeps her scars. Like,
yeah.
Like, where's Chaol during all this? Isn't he supposed to know these movements and shit?
I don't know. So, this obviously causes her to break down.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's thinking of the people she left behind and the people she worked beside. And, like, obviously, I feel like it's safe to say that in terms of people, the people she knew probably were not still alive anyway.
Yeah, because it's been so long and most only live for... But there's still, like, so many people that are from Terrasen, and there's people that are from Eelway. Like, these are people that really are her allies, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, then she's thinking of the children that were there. Like, they are all dead. And she couldn't protect them.
Mm-hmm.
So, she just runs outside past the barrier. And she just lets her power loose on the barrier. And she just keeps burning and burning. So, we're in Chaol's point of view for, like, a very short minute. Like, a hot minute. He is standing guard at a state luncheon, and the king has an announcement that the Calicula rebellion has been squashed, and they'll have to work hard to fill the mines again. Like, a complete lunatic.
Yeah.
The guy is a maniac.
100%. And, like, the way he's trying to spin it as, like, we won against the rebels that are, like, slaves who, like, can barely pick up their axes anymore because they're exhausted. He's like, we beat them. Yay for us. It's
like, congratulations.
Yeah.
Like, make it a fair fight and then see what happens.
Yeah. Not great.
So, yeah. Dorian, like, obviously didn't know what happened, so he asked his dad for clarification. And when the king, like, explains it, Dorian is pissed.
Mm-hmm.
And then we switch right to Dorian's POV. So, like, I mean, when I say Chaol's point of view for a hot minute, I mean a hot minute.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it, though.
Yeah.
So then we go immediately to Dorian's point of view. He wants Sorsha to get out and leave the castle. He says he'll give her money to leave, but wants her to go.
She should have listened.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. She should have. She refuses to go and says that if he stays, so does she. And he's saying he finally understands now why Chaol did what he did to get Celaena to Wendelin. It's a bloody miracle!
But, like, it's dumb because he loved... Well, I guess he kind of figured out he didn't really love her. But, like, he thought he loved Celaena. You think he would have realized that he wanted to keep her safe. But nope. It's just weird.
Yeah. You would think. But, anyway. So, then we hop back to Chaol's point of view for another hot minute. Like, they're going back and forth real quick. So, he's in the tomb, and he's grieving for all of those slaves when Adian comes in. And he wonders if, like, life is better on the other continents. Like, do people treat each other better? And I feel like this is just one of those, like, existential, like, human condition questions.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, you know, is life better elsewhere? Like, are humans better to each other? And I feel like if humans are happy, they're, like, apart from a few crazies, you know, in general, they'll be better to each other.
Yeah.
So,
but it's also like he's very much is the grass greener.
Yeah.
Moment.
Yeah. And so, like, he's talking to Adian here, and he says, so I guess Adian was in that meeting, like that lunch, and he says that he tells Chaol that he has had to do many terrible things in his life, but nothing has made him feel so filthy and despicable as having to thank that man for murdering his people. So during the luncheon, I guess the king had said to Aedion, like, the rebels in Aedion's territory will be quiet now so that they don't meet the same fate as all the slaves. So, like, you're welcome for helping you, because now you won't have to do as much dirty work. And he had to be like, oh, thank you, your majesty. So, like, he is, like, vomiting in his brain about having to thank him, considering so many of the people in the slave camps are from Terrasen. Mm-hmm. So, like, he's annoyed.
Yeah.
So, that night, at the theater, the orchestra, like, because I guess the orchestra is still going strong. Like, the people in Aderlin are still, just living their lives. And, like, the theater plays like there was an orchestra performance. So the orchestra decided to play all the songs of all the kingdoms that had people in the labor camps. So they played, like, traditional songs from Ilwe and Fenharrow and Melisande and Terrasen. And it was sort of like their form of protest. Mm-hmm. So the next morning, by royal decree, the theater was shut down. And no one ever saw the conductor or the musicians again. So they were obviously all killed. So, like, it's escalating a lot. Like, the violence and the, the stepping out of line and you'll meet a disastrous end sort of thing. Like, that's all escalating really fast.
Yeah.
But we switch very quickly to Celaena's point of view again. We're coming back right where we left off. She finished her assault on the wall, and she's still, like, fuming, obviously. Mm-hmm. Rowan sort of showed up and watched her do what she had to do to, like, get it all out. And then he told her that word just came from Wendelin that reinforcements are not coming. And she was just sort of, like, done at that point. It's just sort of like, yeah, cool. Like, obviously, they didn't come 10 years ago, so why would they come now? Like, they didn't aid Terrasen. Why were they going to help them now?
Yeah.
And he tells her that she has his blessing to go get the info from Maeve if she wants to just go to Dornell. And, like, you don't have to fight. Don't worry about it. Just go get your information and go do what you need to do.
Yeah.
And she just has to be like, don't insult me. Like, obviously, I'm going to stay and fight. Just like Nehemia would have, just like my parents would have. And, like, I think this was sort of his way of trying to protect her.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%, yeah.
Like, she took it as an insult, like, as if she would run away. But I don't think that's how it was intended.
No. But it's also, like, she needs to live. Like, she can't be killed in this. If she's killed in this battle, the king is gonna, like, it wouldn't even be cowardly for her to leave. It would suck, obviously. She'd be leaving everybody to die, basically. Yeah. But she needs to live because she's the only one we know of that knows about the word keys and, like, all that shit. Like, she needs to do something about that. Yeah.
It's like one of those things of, like, a bigger picture sort of thing, right? Mm-hmm. Like, do you help or do you, like, sacrifice all these people for the greater good?
Yeah, the trolley problem.
Yes, exactly. I was thinking the exact same thing.
Yeah, it always comes back to the trolley.
It always comes back to the trolley problem. So she told him that he was obviously needed here. He sort of gave the Demi-Fae their only chance. So if he stayed, she was gonna stay. Mm-hmm. Because she would follow him to whatever end. So, like, they have connected, and they have really formed a bond very quickly in just this section.
It's terrible, but it's just trauma bonding.
It is just trauma bonding. But whatever. So
yeah.
this is actually one of the huge quotes of the book, to whatever end, right? So he gives her her dagger back, and he looks into her eyes, and he calls her Fireheart, which is another, like, her nickname now for the rest of the book.
Yeah.
Like,
and
Fireheart is a thing.
Her mother used to call her that, and I think she even kind of wonders, like, if he knows the significance of it, but there's no real way he could know.
Yeah. So they then discover that apparently the reinforcements from Wendelin aren't coming for a reason. They're not just not coming because. They're not coming because 3,000 of Adarlanian soldiers attacked Wendelin's northern border, so the legions were sent there.
So this actually makes it more reasonable that they're gonna, like, attack
Sue.
Yeah. So I guess there is reason for them to be worried.
But I guess it's just coincidental that they happen to find the soldiers and, like, all of this stuff right before the attack.
It is, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Rowan sort of, like, speaks to the whole fortress and says, like, he is encouraging the non-fighters to flee. Like, if you cannot fight, you should escape.
Yeah.
But no one does. So after a night of planning, they go back to their room, and Rowan tells her that he did contact his cadre to ask for help a few days ago because some things are worth the risk. And she then tells him that she claims him as her friend, no matter how he protests. So even if he doesn't want to be, they're friends, whether he likes it or not.
They're, like, about to die, so, like, you can be your fucking friend.
Yeah.
Let her have this.
Yeah. So the next day, they actually send all the non-fighters to the healer's tower, and the plan is for them to help with the injured until everything is over. And I guess hope that the soldiers don't attack the healer's tower.
You can only do so much, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. So that night, the army approaches, and Rowan wakes Celaena during the night and tells her that he thinks they've been betrayed because the army has managed to avoid every single trap. And they were sort of counting on those traps to, like, slow the army down, separate them into smaller groups, maybe, like, get some of them injured so that they had less to fight with. Mm-hmm. But somebody had managed to, like, someone must have told them because they avoided every trap.
Yeah. It wasn't just luck.
No. And he then says when he finds who betrayed them, he would splatter them on the walls. And it's like, I agree with you, but, like, big picture, dude. You've got 200 people coming at you right now, plus, like, some supernatural stuff, too.
Yeah.
So Rowan and Celaena are, like, standing on the field between the fortress and the Wordstones. So they're inside they're inside the magical barrier.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I'm assuming this, like, does the magical barrier only protect from magic, or does it also keep people out that don't have permission to be in?
I don't know. Because when Celaena came there first, she, like, felt it as she walked through. So, like, was that because she's allowed to be there? I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, so he tells her... So I feel like this is a bit of a like an oxymoron. So he tells her... Not an oxymoron, like a... Oh, what's the word? It's like he tells her the opposite thing. He tells her two things that are opposite of each other.
Contradictory?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So he tells her to focus on the creatures and to take them down, whatever means necessary, but use your magic sparingly.
Yeah.
Like, to me, those two things contradict each other.
100%.
So, like, Rowan, figure your shit out.
Yeah, you're not a very good instructor right now. I don't understand what's happening.
Right. So, the creatures come through the forest, and there are 3 of them. And they sort of thought that the skinwalkers managed to kill one of them, but he was still there.
Good.
So,
E.
Yeah. So that sort of sucks for them.
It's bad.
Yeah. And she thinks that, like, there's no way they stand a chance against 3 of them. But she shifts into her Fae form nonetheless. And she says, like, the darkness they bring suck the life out of everything. So, like, she's like, no way I can let the darkness reach the fortress.
Mm-hmm.
Narok then walks out of the forest, and he also has, like, a black obsidian thing around his neck, and she says he just looks so empty. He sends the darkness towards the ward stones and, like, hits it a few times. And Rowan sort of says to Aelin, like, stay inside, get inside the gates, like, just stay safe.
Mm-hmm.
And she remembers that the last time they fought the creature, it balked, like, it reared back at her flame, like, it sort of winced.
Didn't like.
No, did not like her flame. So she, like, shares that, and Rowan's like, yeah, but if you want to use it, you'll have to go outside the barrier. And the last time she went outside the barrier, as soon as she made eye contact with these creatures, she was in its thrall immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, so he's like, you probably can't.
It's probably not the best plan.
No. So, all of a sudden, somebody yells, they're here! And turns out that there were the soldiers. So, like, in front of the fortress, it's just Narok and the 3 creatures. There are no soldiers. So they're like, where are the soldiers?
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody yells, oh, they're here! And it turns out they were in a tunnel. Like, they had gone through an escape tunnel and snuck into the fortress. And, like, Rowan had actually stationed the weaker soldiers inside the fortress near the emergency exit so it wouldn't be a slaughter, and now the opposite is happening.
Now it's a goddamn slaughter.
It's not funny, but
no.
I will say that it is genius on the part of Narok.
Yeah.
Like, so smart.
I don't think we ever really get why somebody betrayed them.
No, I don't think we do either.
We do get
the person.
But, like, why would you murder everybody? It seems insane. Like, You're getting all of these people killed. It is now on your hands.
Yeah. So Celaena, like, walks closer to the barrier, and Rowan is, like, doesn't obviously want her to go outside of it, but she tells him that they need him inside and just leave the creatures and the barrier to her. And she tells him she's expendable. And this is, like, a heart moment. Because she's like, I'm expendable. And he's like, no, you're not. You're the heir to a throne. And she's like, not right now, I'm not. Right now, I'm a woman with the power to save lives. Yeah.
Like, I guess, but you're also not expendable.
No. Bigger picture here, Celaena.
What was it? Celalith?
Celalian.
Yeah,
Celalian.
Yeah.
Celalian. So he tells her to focus on the darkness and to hold the line. Like, don't engage the creatures. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I understand. Don't worry. But
so good at following orders.
As we know and as we learn about Aelin, is she does what she wants when she wants. And she does not listen.
She badass.
So she tells him she understands, but already in her head, she's like, no way that's happening.
Yeah, she's like, you go deal with that shit and leave me alone.
Yeah. So she's obviously very upset because she failed the people in Indovir and Calicola. Mm-hmm. And she failed the people in the fortress because they're in danger. And she just thinks, like, she was too late and she has had enough. And that these people butchered Nehemia's people. They butchered her people. So, like, she's getting pissed. She's working herself up into a frenzy. Into her killing calm, we'll say. So that's when Rowan leaves, obviously, to go help inside. And so she steps outside the barrier and thinking that to herself that she owed the people that were murdered. So she makes a wall of flame against the barrier. So, like, there's no way the darkness can get past it.
Mm-hmm.
So it does, like, recoil from her flame, but it keeps punching holes in the wall of flame. So she's, like, fixing it on instinct, but after so long of keeping the wall intact and, like, fixing the holes, her nose starts to bleed from the effort. So she walks further out, and Narok is, like, missing. Just gone. But the 3 creatures are there, and they come at her, and all 3 of them attack her with swords. So she, like, puts a fire on top of her blade, and they hiss and call it Goldrin. And they say that she isn't Athril, beloved of the Dark Queen, or Brannon of the Wildfire. So I'm assuming the sword belongs to one of those 2 people.
Mm-hmm.
And she remembers now back to the first book with Cain, like the guy that she had to fight against at the last scene. The thing inside of him says that she was brought back, like all the players in the unfinished game. And she's thinking that, like, this demon race of people that forged the word keys had been banished by Maeve, but obviously some had gotten stuck, and they're the ones that waged war against Celaena centuries later. And she's wondering if the King of Adarlan had learned how to use the keys to harness the demons.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this confusingness boils down to her realizing that these 3 creatures, are actually the Valg. So we're finally getting a name on the creatures.
Yeah.
And they're actually very forthcoming with information.
Well, they just assume they're going to win, and
yeah,
she won't be able to do anything anyway, so they're like... It's less villain monologue-y than we sometimes get, but it is for sure still a villain monologue.
But they do tell her that they are princes of their realm. So they are Valg princes, and they are continuing, like, Valg princes come up a whole bunch.
Mm-hmm.
So they are from a realm of eternal dark and ice and wind, and they've been waiting ages to taste the sunshine again. And, like, I can see where they're coming from. If they weren't, like, inherently evil and, like, just wanting to suck the joy out of everything and, like, kill everybody, I can understand wanting to escape a land of eternal dark and ice.
Mm-hmm.
And be in the sun.
Yeah.
Just, like, leave people alone.
Yeah. Just be better.
Yeah. So she sort of counters back and says that, like, you guys were beaten once, we'll do it again. But one of them says they were not beaten, only contained.
Interesting.
Yes.
Sure, that'll never come up again.
Mm-hmm. And then said they were contained until a mortal man was foolish enough to invite them back and use the glorious bodies they were given. So it seems like the bodies are actual, like, people, and then the Valg inhabit them sort of like parasites.
Mm-hmm.
So Celaena's, like, stressed now because she's like, are the men still inside? Like, and, like, you know, like, if she cuts their heads off, will the demon Valg princess smoke out and find a new vessel? Like in Supernatural.
Yeah.
That's literally what I think of.
Yeah, same. And I don't know if they could.
Yeah, I don't know if they can either. I feel like they can't because don't they need a obsidian, like a word stone
to keep them in somebody's body? So then, yeah, I don't know what happens to them when I guess they die when the person dies.
Yeah, because they wouldn't. Like, I feel like the way I think about it like there is a soul, like a demon, like a Valg inside the stone.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it gets placed on somebody, it allows the soul to inhabit the body.
Yes.
That's how I think of it. I don't know if that's accurate, but that's how I interpret it.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, the Valg cannot control a body or cannot, like, inhabit a body unless their wordstone is on them. And we see that in the future, right? Like, people getting the wordstone off.
Yeah.
And
yeah. It's just interesting because I'm like, I don't know. Could they live inside of a body if the body was dead? Like, kind of thinking back to Supernatural. Like,
right.
because they're hard to kill, one would assume.
Yeah.
So, like, would it be possible for them to live in a body if the original person had died?
I can't imagine it would, because I feel like then it would be so much easier to just kill a person and then put a wordstone collar on them.
True.
Right? Like, they have how many dead bodies now do they have in the slave camps?
Well, yeah.
And they're not using any of those.
Yeah, but they need the magic in the body, which is why they were going for the demi-fae.
Yeah, but
so I guess they would have to be alive. Yeah.
Yeah, because, like, there's no way we can say that some of those slaves in the camps did not have magic.
Yeah. So
Some
I guess...
of them definitely did.
Yeah. So I guess they need to be alive to be inhabited by these Valg princes. But if you stabbed them in the heart, both would just live, do you think?
Yes. Because I think the Valg are so indestructible.
Yeah, they would keep their host body person alive.
But I guess here's the thing. If you stab them in the heart, would that kill the host's soul?
Yeah.
Because the host is still inside for a bit, because she said she's wondering if the men are still in there.
Yeah.
So, like, would a death blow kill the person inside while leaving the Valg to inhabit the body?
I think it is kind of like demons, that they would keep the person inside alive by being inside of them. Like, and by demons, I mean Supernatural.
Yeah.
Because I feel like once the host dies, the magic isn't there to keep the body in anymore. But I don't know. These are all speculations. I don't think we get any answers on any of this.
No, we're spiraling in a mythology spiral.
Yeah. Because
like,
we got
what
time
is
for
the
that.
lore? Yeah. Anyway, so they keep fighting, but obviously Celaena's getting tired. She's still protecting the barrier with her fire, and then she's fighting these 3 supernaturally, like, tough guys with swords. And she says, like, she didn't have time to tunnel into her power, which is unfortunate. Yeah. And the Valg princes just, like, keep at her. They just keep going. And she is, like, just trying to hold on, hoping that Rowan, like, will come back for her. And she's like, it's a weakness. It wasn't weakness to admit that she needs him. So, like, this is a realization for her that, you know, she can need people and it's okay.
Yeah.
She's trying to breathe, but instead of air, blood comes back up.
Ugh.
So, like, she is hurting real bad.
Yeah.
And she thinks that she deserves this ending for turning her back on her people. And, like, I just want to be like, girl, you just turned 19. Like, you did not turn your back on your people when you were 8 years old. Like, I just don't understand. Was her expectation that she, like, instead of running away, that she just turns back and, like,
she would have got killed
at the age of 8? Like, I don't understand what she was gonna do.
She, like, literally would have just been killed, because that was the whole point. Like,
and if she was, say, a little bit older, say that she was, like, 13 or 14, Arabin would not have let her go.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I wish she would be a little bit easier on herself.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she sees, like, movement off in the distance and sees that it's actually 5 figures. A man, a bird, and 3 predators. 2 wolves and a mountain cat. So apparently it's Rowan's cadre. They've come to help. So she makes a bridge of flame between the darkness for them to, like, get through to the fortress and tells them that Rowan needs help inside. So, like, she's fighting and she's staggering and bringing up blood. And they all are just like, cool, and leave and, like, peace out into the fortress. The only one that pauses to watch her is the mountain cat. So the one that has been here before.
Yeah.
And she just tells him, like, go, it's fine. So she's, like, starting to weaken, and one of the princes throws her into her own wall of fire. And she tries to swipe with the sword, but she's, like, useless. She's tired. Mm-hmm. And she says, like, she feels as useless as her vow to Nehemia. And, like, thinking, like, even breathing is an effort for her. So, like, she is at the end.
Yeah, she's struggling.
She is really struggling. So we move now to Rowan's POV. So he's in the fortress. Luca apparently told him that some dude named Bass is the one who let the creatures in, and, like, he's already dead, so, like, don't worry about it. But, like, I don't think we ever got anything from Bass. Like, he's never a player in this. It's just some rando.
Yeah, I just don't understand, like, other than plot, why?
Yeah.
Just why?
Yeah, just why. So he's fighting, and, like, he's doing okay because, like, you know, he's a trained soldier. He's got a ton of power, so, like, he's fine. But the rest of the Demi-Fae are failing. Like, they're getting tired, and they're being slaughtered.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, his cadre come in, and they start fighting, so, like, everyone's like, yay! And he immediately leaves. He's like, you guys got this. I'm gonna go help Celaena.
Of course, yeah.
And he knows that the darkness hasn't descended on them, so, like, she must still be alive.
Yeah.
And he sees her, and I don't know why, but he says he can't reach her. I don't get that.
Does she just have them all enclosed in, like, a circle of fire?
Oh, maybe.
That's what I'm thinking, because she was pushed into her own wall of flame.
Yeah, okay.
So there has to be, maybe there's fire in between. Although he could just, like, let a tiny bit of air out, break the fire.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So he knows that, like, at this point, she should have retreated. Like, he can see her and see that, like, she is exhausted, and she probably should have retreated by now, but she's not. And he obviously knows this about her, that she has no intention of saving her own life. And we've seen this in this book several times. Like, if it's just her, she wouldn't care. It's only when other people are in danger that she has the motivation to try and, like, solve the problem.
Yeah.
So he makes his way to, like, he's trying to find a way to get to her, but Gavriel, who is the mountain cat, the one that he helped tattoo earlier, pounces on him and prevents him from going to her, and he can only watch as one of the princes pulls Celaena into his arms, and her fire winks out. So, she's lost.
She's dead.
Yeah.
The end of book series.
Yes. Yeah, no more series. The four other books have no one in it. So, it's all about Chaol.
Favorite series.
So, Celaena is in an illusion with the princes. So, they feed off of her fear and pain. So, that's what they're doing. They're causing her to relive her traumatic moments. So, she sees a bloody bed. She sees Nehemia's body. She sees her parents' bodies. And then she hears them call her a coward. And, like, all of this, like, coming at her at once makes her throw up. And the princes, she can feel their presence nearby. Like, she knows she's in an illusion. Like, it's not, she knows it's not real. But she says that they feel hungry and cold, but they don't consume her right away. They're playing with her. So, like, they brush up against her like cats and, like, let her experience her terror.
Mm-hmm.
And she sort of knows that she's a coward. So, like, she doesn't fight when they, like, claw at her cheek or, like, her shoulder. One of them severs her braid, like, cuts it at her shoulder. She just embraces the dark. And she feels like she's in hell. And she says she's in, like, an abyss that has no beginning or end. And she keeps thinking of, like, the last words she said to Nehemia. When your people are lying dead around you, don't come crying to me. And, like, this really, I think, has affected her. Like, obviously we know it's affected her, but I think she's been keeping this fact in her head that this is the last thing she said to her friend.
Yeah.
This entire book. Like, this is half the reason why she is so, like, desolate, we'll say.
Yeah. And, like, Nehemia's last word was coward. Her last word was real shitty. Like, it's really bad. Really bad.
So she says she feels like a waste of space. Like a stain on the world, unworthy of her birthright. Which, like, yikes. Yeah. And she was living the day that she rampaged through Endovir and all the blood that she spilled. Like, she killed a lot of people that day. And she thought, like, oh, she must deserve this. And so in her illusion, she's stripped and strapped to posts, and she's naked. And Nehemia is whipping her and calling her a coward. And then Sam, her, like, childhood sweetheart, the first boy she ever loved, he came behind her, and then he whipped her and took a turn. And then there was, like, this huge, long line of people that she wronged, and each person took their turn. But all Celaena could say was, again, again, again. Like, she was asking for it. She wanted them to punish her because she felt like she needed to be punished.
Yeah.
So she knew that the Valg princes hadn't killed her yet, because her agony was sustaining them, and, like, they loved it. Like, the amount of agony that she had, the amount of pain that she had in her life, and her guilt and everything, like, was better than they've ever encountered before. So they were, like, loving it. So they kept her going through the memories and reliving these terrible times. And she says, like, she has no idea how much time passed before there was, like, a rushing frozen river. They finally found the bottom of the abyss, the bottom of her soul. And apparently the Valg princes hissed as they met it. And that's the end of this week. We're leaving it. It's actually quite cliffhangery.
Yeah. I feel like, as awful as everything that's happening is, it's kind of therapeutic for her. Like, what she's reliving all these things and all that stuff. Like, I feel like it is therapeutic, and it's gonna help her eventually. Like, I think this is helpful in the long run for her, but it's very awful.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is it for this week. If you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in any of our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions, please reach out to us by email at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com. or on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at, well, I don't think we really use Twitter anymore. It's also called X now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we're at Coffee and Co-Read at all of those. We're also on TikTok at coffee.coread.
Yes.
And there is a poll about our What Would You Rather this week. So you can answer that on Spotify, or if you happen to listen on Anchor, you can answer it there too, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So next week we're going to be finishing off this book with chapters 54 to 68. So make sure to follow along. And if you're enjoying our little chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you get our content. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you on the next page.